Yeah, the Molly's in there.
I'm gonna log out now.
Did it work?
Like, as a YouTuber, I could sit here on YouTube, I could bring you evidence, I could bring you my sources, I could lay out everything in front of you, but people won't believe me as much as they would believe someone who's labeled the expert.
How you doing? I had a really good night. Oh, had a great night. Anyway, Meme Copian people, welcome. Love Meme. Meme is the man. Meme is the man. Guys, please hit that like and please hit the subscribe for notifications. Let me bring y'all up to steam real quick here. Othal, Ozone, Wallace. Day 3 of his trial. This man. I know that guy. I swear if that's not the guy I know. Holy cow.
Dr. Hahn, can you hear us?
Oh, great. Now we got it.
Dr. Hahn. Dr. Hahn, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Can you
Give
hear
me
me?
1 second.
Yes, excellent. So can you just mute yours for now? Do you know how to mute your? Thank you, doctor.
Sorry, I had my TV on. The Apple TV. Anyway, everybody for me. This guy, he nerfed a Daytona Beach police officer. That officer spent 2 months with his eyeball before he passed. Ozone was found at a treehouse. They say it's a treehouse. You think of a treehouse, it's a nice, fun place for the little rascals to go and play in. We saw this thing, and it was part of a training for a compound. If you ask a layman like myself, he's a member of the NFAC, which is a offshoot of the. Okay, I'm not muted anymore. Which is an offshoot of the new Black Panthers. And this is the first Florida death penalty case since I think it was Jared Parkland, Boom Boomer, that guy. This is the new death penalty case. The new death penalty law in Florida is that it only takes 8 out of 12 jurors to say yes on the death penalty. So, well, that is one issue. There's no question about Ozone pulling the nerf. Okay? The question is, was it in self-defense? How did it become self-defense? Well, this was part of a crime mapping issue. It's a broader issue that happens to be a United States constitutional issue under Amendment 4. Because the fact of the matter is that maps and lines, stuff like that, they are fictions. They are not things that are given to you by your creator. They are things made by man. They are things that they don't have natural lines. You can't see where you are. You don't know what zone you're in. You've ever driven a car a multitude of miles. You don't know what zip code you're in. You don't know what area code you're in. You don't know what that map looks like. Anyway, Daytona Beach, part of their... hang on, here we go. We got Judge Z is coming in now. This guy's a great judge. He's a great judge. He is very fair. He has been fair during this entire process. This is the actual state feed. Anyway, so what we may have here is a Fourth Amendment issue. If it gets that far, before it gets to the United States Supreme Court, it'll probably take about 10 years. We'll just give that as a reference point, okay? The reason why I'm covering this case is because if it makes it that far, I want you guys to be here with me on the ground floor. How many people do bring you drama, bring you action, bring you cop stuff, bring you laughter and immaturity on a Wednesday, no doubt. All of this just because what underlying thing deals with your natural rights to be secure in your privacy of your home, your vehicle, your papers, your persons. You don't need to have a reason to be somewhere. That's the question. No, whether or not Ozone was a good dude. He's not. I'll tell you that right now. Ozone's not a good dude. Facts are the facts. They are what they are. But we got this prosecutor here that sounds like...
You want to test Dr. Hunt's hip well, can you hear me, sir?
Not Andy Griffith. Matlock. Same dude.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
And we have a guy who thinks he's Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig's famous speech. When he retired from baseball. He stepped out on the field. They had the microphone set up, and he said, "Today, I'm the luckiest man to ever live." And there's reverb. There's the echo. Anyway, guys, thank you for being here. Farkey's been a member for 2 months. So awesome. Love the puppy. Love the puppy. Isabella, how are you doing? You guys gonna try hit? Oh my gosh, Volstorm.
The only way I could do it, Judge, is if I log in. No. I just don't have a screen here that allows me to, unless you know how to use this, Judge.
Shizzy, how are you doing this morning? I said hi to a lot of y'all, but the mic wasn't working. White Rabbit, how are you?
Let me, you sure? Okay.
I can't figure out what your avatar is, Jody, but good morning to you. Bobby Baloney, how are you doing? I love the cake, frog.
I think maybe I figured it out. There we go.
Jude, what's up? So, guys, this is what it is. We are here. This will be a big day. We have today and tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're expecting a verdict. This judge does not he's the NFA and NFAC. Prosecutor in this case is a jabroni. I'm gonna let you guys know that right now. The defense is not very active in building the fact that this is a Fourth Amendment issue. I need to go back over opening arguments because after a couple of days of trial, I'm like, I'm not hearing this as a solid self-defense issue that you're trying to raise. And you may be hearing a lot more in a second, which they were mine.
Yes, Your Honor, we did. Yes, sir.
Awesome. Somebody's weed eater sucks. Guys, the jury's coming in.
It's peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly time.
The next witness will be testifying to the platform via Zoom by stipulation of the parties. Sir, would you raise your right hand? Would you raise your right hand? Can you hear me now?
Nope.
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Dr. Hahn.
Good morning.
If for some reason you can't hear me, just let me know.
Okay.
Could you please
not know this
state
guy.
your entire name and spell it for the court reporter, sir?
My entire name is Patrick, Patrick, middle initial P. Last name is Han, Han.
And doctor, what do you do for a living, sir?
I'm a neurosurgeon at UF Health at Halifax Health in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Way to start your mornings off.
What does a
Had your breakfast,
neurosurgeon
kids.
do, sir?
Neurosurgeon is responsible for evaluating patients with a disease of the brain or spinal cord and operating when necessary on the brain or spinal cord
What's
to
up,
help those
Cat Ninja?
patients.
And you said you practice at Halifax Hospital?
Yes.
Could you tell the jury just briefly your educational background that allows you to practice as a neurosurgeon, sir?
Yes. A neurosurgeon graduates from medical school after 4 years, which I did in 1997 from the University of Kansas. And then the training program is 7 years of residency, which I performed from 1997 to 2005 in Phoenix, Arizona at the Barrow Neurological Institute. And then at that point, you're able to go into independent practice.
And can you briefly tell the jury your career in your independent practice since you finished your residency?
After I finished my residency in 2005, I became an assistant professor at the University of Louisville Department of Neurosurgery and did that until approximately 2006. And then I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, was the director of neurosurgery at St. John Medical Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and did that for 13 years. And then approximately 3.5 years ago, became the medical director of neurosurgery at UF Health at Halifax Health in Daytona
Tulsa
Beach,
Turnaround's a
Florida.
great song
I
by
currently
Kenny
work
Rogers,
for the University of Florida for the state of
Fifth
Florida.
Dimension.
I became a board certified neurosurgeon approximately 4 years after graduating from residency, which is pretty standard.
And sir, as a neurosurgeon working for the University of Florida at Halifax, are you on call at times?
Yes.
And were you the on-call neurosurgeon the evening that Officer Jason Rayner was shot in the head on June 23rd of 2021?
Yes.
And were you one of the first doctors to treat Jason after his arrival at the hospital that evening?
Yes.
Do you recall your initial observations of Officer Rayner when you first saw him once you got to the hospital?
Yes, when Officer Rayner came into the emergency room to the trauma bay, there was no signs of life. He was intubated and then resuscitated, fluids and medications. He then started moving his right upper extremity. He obtained his CT of his head during his workup, which demonstrated that he had a gunshot wound to the brain that started on the left side. The bullet entered the left side of the head and entered into the brain, causing a hemorrhage and fracture of the skull.
And were you initially working alongside trauma doctors as well?
Yes, I was.
Was that Dr. Nelson?
Yes.
Now, on the brain scans, did you see any shrapnel in his brain?
Yes, there was some metal fragments from a bullet deep in the brain in the expected trajectory. The trajectory appeared to start on the left side and went through the skull, and the shrapnel was lodged deep on the left side of the brain. In addition, there was a tract of hemorrhage associated with the bullet that went down towards the central part of the brain, as well as a hemorrhage upon the initial entry into the brain just below the skull.
Now, would the shrapnel be both metal from the bullet, but also part of his skull as well?
Yes.
Did you perform a procedure on Officer Rayner after the imaging was completed and reviewed?
Yes, he was moved up to the intensive care unit after resuscitation. I put an intracranial pressure monitor, which consists of making an incision on the right side of the head at the bedside in the ICU, making a small burr hole with a handheld drill, and then putting a fiber optic wire approximately
borehole
3 centimeters into the brain, and then attaching it to a monitor to measure the intracranial pressure. The intracranial pressure was very high, about 2 to 3 times normal. We attempted to give him medications to reduce the pressure called mannitol. That really had no effect.
When you say intracranial pressure, can you describe that a little more, maybe in layman's terms?
Yes, we know that a standard living patient without head trauma or disease, that the intracranial pressure should be anywhere from 0 to 10 to 12. We measure it in millimeters of mercury, like we would measure your blood pressure. When there are mass lesions like a tumor, or in this case, trauma to the brain causing a hemorrhage and significant brain swelling, that will cause the pressure in the skull to elevate. And anything greater than about 20 is abnormal. Upon placing the fiber optic monitor, my recollection was that it was in the 40s.
And if the intracranial or brain pressure is not resolved, can it lead to death of a patient?
Yes.
And were you concerned about that potentially happening with Officer Rayner once you saw the measurements?
Yes.
So what did you do after getting that monitor in there and seeing that the brain pressure was so highly elevated?
I then recommended the family that we should go to the operating room immediately. Our only hope was to making a large incision on the left side of the head, like a reverse question mark, starting at just in front of the ear and then curving posteriorly all the way back towards the back, and then coming vertically about straight line about 10 centimeters, and then horizontally towards the anterior, the front of the head, and then elevating that scalp off the skull, and then removing basically half the skull on that side, and then evacuating any hemorrhage. And by doing so, that would allow the brain that was damaged to swell out the hole, taking the pressure off the rest of the normal brain, and specifically, most importantly, the brainstem. This type of procedure was developed during military conflicts, during war for soldiers, and we know that is very effective.
Let me ask you a couple questions about that, doctor. So was it the left side of his skull that you removed, a portion of the left side of his skull?
Yes.
And when you say that you removed hemorrhage, what does that mean?
Well, we could see on the CAT scan that the bullet had caused rupture of blood vessels, arteries, and veins as it entered through the skull and then through what's called the dura mater, the lining of the brain, and then through the superficial surface of the brain, and pretty much all along the tract of the bullet. And so after we made the incision and removed the skull, we opened up this dura mater and we encountered a large amount of blood and evacuated all of that and then controlled the bleeding.
By evacuate, you mean you just removed it, right?
We remove it with suction and yes.
And did this operation, this initial operation you did resolve the brain pressure for the time being?
I would use the word improve.
Is it Friday?
It did not resolve it. I think it improved it to the point that we had an opportunity to save his life. When the pressures were in the mid 40s to low 50s, that's not compatible with living any longer than a short period of time. We had noted when we elevated the scalp that the bone was fractured. Some of the fragments were penetrating into the brain superficially. I could see them with my gross eyes, and so I did remove those fragments of bone. I controlled the bleeding into the brain the best that I could, evacuated also some hemorrhage that went into the brain with my suction, and then placed some drains under the skin and tunneled them out and then closed the scalp, thereby allowing, as I said, the brain to come out. We then transferred him back to the intensive care unit and then started post-operative management of his increased intracranial pressure, which took several weeks.
Doctor, did you continue to be involved in Officer Rayner's care over the several weeks that he was at Halifax Hospital?
Yes.
And did Officer Rayner eventually, after further complications from the gunshot wound, pass away?
Yes.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Doctor, I don't have any other further questions for you, but defense might have some. Please stand by.
Yes.
Any cross-examination?
Just very briefly, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Hahn. You're not able to give any opinion as to the distance that the firearm was from Mr. Rayner's head, are you?
No.
You're not able to give any opinion as to the angle of entry that the bullet went in, are you?
Good question.
No.
Okay. I have nothing else, Your Honor.
Thank you. Yes.
We don't.
Just one more question for you, Doctor. When you did see Officer Rayner that night,
Passed.
and you evaluated him and did the initial operation, did you ever observe any soot on his head or around the wound?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hahn.
Welcome.
All right, state your next witness.
He should be in the waiting room, Judge.
The
Dr. Nelson.
Is it
prosecutor's
Lars?
question,
Yes.
I would think would be an advantage for the defense. Saying that it wasn't, I mean, maybe not an advantage. Let me think about that one. You see how my mind worked? I stopped myself midstream. I just started, the squirrel started.
Nelson.
Is this working now? Is this working? Ah,
Yes.
forget it. I give up.
Okay, I'm telling him to start the video, but there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Are you, what's your name again?
Hello, my name's Lars Nelson.
Lars.
All right, and this is your witness?
Yes.
All right. If you'll raise your right hand, Ms. Nelson, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this call shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
If for some reason you cannot hear what I'm saying, please just let me know and I'll repeat myself, okay?
Okay.
What?
Doctor, could you please state your entire name and spell it for the court reporter we have here in the courtroom?
My name is Lars Spencer Nelson, Lars, Spencer Nelson.
And doctor, what do you do for a living, sir?
I'm a trauma and general surgeon.
What does a trauma and general surgeon do?
Typically, they provide services such as on-call coverage, surgery when need to be done. From a general side, gallbladders, appendixes, some of the bread and butter general surgery, and from a traumatic side, chest tubes, colon resections, colostomies, controlling bleeding.
And sir, where do you practice?
I practice in Daytona Beach, Florida.
At Halifax Hospital?
Correct.
And can you tell the jury briefly your educational background that allows you to practice in medicine?
I completed 4 years of college. I went on to medical school, then on to general surgery residency for 5 years. I completed a fellowship and completed all the boarding and the exams necessary in order to be credentialed as a trauma and general surgeon.
And can you also tell the jury briefly your career in the medical field, where you've been, what you've done?
I've been in Daytona Beach, Florida since the entirety of my practice in 2016. While I've been here, I've been a part of North Florida Surgeons, which is a large general surgery practice group here. I've been part of it was Global Trauma Services initially, and now University of Florida, taking care and doing the trauma surgery at Halifax Hospital. I've also been an associated part of Florida Healthcare Plans as a partial general surgeon and done some locums coverage as well.
And does being a trauma physician require you to be on call at times, doctor?
It does.
Were you on call the night that Officer Jason Rayner was shot back in June of 2021?
I was.
And were you one of the initial treating physicians for Officer Jason Rayner?
Yes.
What were your initial observations of Officer Rayner when he arrived at the trauma bay at Halifax?
Initially, as what I can recollect, he came in, in basically what we call extremis. He was very sick. His blood pressure was very low, and he was hypotensive and shock. He had some trauma noted to his face and head. He came in on a backboard via EMS. I believe they initially tried to attempt to get an airway to secure that, were unsuccessful. So typically in the trauma bay, that's our line of work, is to do the airway, the breathing circulation initially, and stabilize the patient. So those were all initiated.
And did you have an opportunity to observe the gunshot wound to the left side of his head?
I did.
Was there any injury to his left eye that you recall?
There was extensive injury to his left eye. His left eye was essentially out of his socket.
When you observed Officer Rayner and began treating him that night, do you recall ever observing any soot around the gunshot wound?
I don't recall. My primary goal there is to stabilize the patient, damage control, bleeding control, things of that nature. I don't recall any direct soot.
And as part of his trauma treatment, were scans ordered of his brain and his head?
Yes, they were.
And were you working alongside a neurosurgeon by the name of Dr. Hahn?
I was.
did there come a point in his initial treatment that it appeared as if Officer Rayner didn't have any brain activity?
On initial arrival, he did not appear to be doing much of anything. And throughout the initial course, again, when we stabilized him, resuscitated him, and intubated him, he did not really have much of any neurologic activity. And we got him up to the intensive care unit, again, attempting to stabilize him. And there was no really significant signs that I could recollect of any neurologic activity.
And is that where he stayed after he left the trauma unit? He went to the intensive care unit?
Correct. He went from the trauma unit, CT scans, and then up into the critical care unit.
And as a trauma doctor, that kind of ended your involvement since you work primarily out of the trauma bay?
It did.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Doctor, I don't have any other questions for you, but the defense attorneys might have a few. Please stand by, sir.
Okay.
Any cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Nelson, you aren't able to give any opinion as to how close the gunshot was fired from, are you?
I can't give a direct opinion. It appeared to be relatively close given the extensive injuries he succumbed to based on the CT scans and physical evidence, but I can't say specifically.
But it appeared to be close, but you can't say how far away it was.
I can't specifically know.
Okay. All right. And you said you didn't see any soot, but would he have been treated by paramedics on his way in and possibly clean the wound in that area?
Possibly.
Okay. Did you see any stripling, from the barrel or from the gunshot?
Can you explain?
Well, if it's really close, at point blank, you'll see the burn marks or the marking around the skin that it's stripling. Did you see anything like that?
Again, from what I recollect, there's bleeding and maybe a little bit of brain matter, but I couldn't see any direct skin discoloration. I was primarily there to stabilize him, get his blood pressure up, and basically save his life.
All right. And then as far as, I know the shot came from the left, but do you have any conclusion as to the angle, whether it was going up or down, or was it straight across, or do you have any conclusion as to that?
I don't have any specific conclusion. The trajectory appeared to come from the left side, and there was extensive facial trauma and damage to his brain with bleeding and subdural hematomas, but I don't know exactly the direction surmised from there.
I don't have anything else, Your Honor.
All right, thank you very much. Any redirect? All right, thank you, Dr. Nelson. You're excused.
Thank you.
Can I have counsel sidebar just for a second?
What are you guys doing? Why is this taking so long? We know he was shot. We got the video footage. Why do we have two doctors where we're taking them out from their practice to be in here on a video call? Did you ever find out if she got the caramel mocha creamer? Was it caramel mocha? I was in a hurry at Walmart. I want to make sure my jurors are taken care of. But we don't need to do this anymore. Why don't we just hurry up? Okay? Good. That's what I imagine was being said. That was my interpretation of Liz. Let me refill my refill. Oh gosh. I thought that was YouTube.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Would you please raise your right hand and be sworn? Do you swear or affirm that the
Did you say
testimony
yeah?
you're about
Did
to
you
give in
say
this call
yeah?
shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Just one moment, Your Honor. Good morning, Doctor.
Morning.
Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Noah Prince. I'm a plastic and reconstructive surgeon with the University of Florida and also at Halifax Health. I'm the chief of plastic surgery.
Okay, is that in Daytona Beach?
It is.
Okay, and how long have you been there, Doc?
I've been here almost 3 years.
And before that?
I was in private practice in Pennsylvania, and then before that in training in Gainesville at the University of Florida.
Okay, and educational background?
Did my undergraduate at Duke University. I did my medical school at Tufts University and also Eastern Virginia Medical School, and then an integrated plastic surgery residency training at the University of Florida.
Any specialties, or did you already say that?
Within plastic surgery, I'm a craniofacial trauma surgeon. I do general reconstruction, hand surgery,
Those jobs.
All sorts of general plastic surgery sort of things. So it's all encompassing.
That's why his forehead looks like okay. Any board certifications?
Yep, I'm certified by the American Board of Plastic Surgery.
Okay, thank you. Your Honor, at this point, I tender the witness be allowed to provide opinion testimony.
Any objection?
Knows how
The witness will be allowed to express an opinion.
Thank you, Judge. So let's talk about a patient that you had back in June and July of 2021 by the name of Officer Jason Rayner. Do you recall that case? Do you recall that patient?
I do.
Okay, how did you get involved, sir?
Sure. He presented as a trauma patient prior to my evaluation by about 2 weeks, and I was asked to consult for his facial fractures. I was serving as the essentially the craniofacial trauma surgeon. I believe I saw him about 2 weeks after he presented. He had extensive facial fractures extending from essentially all across his face, and they asked me to get involved on a delayed basis.
And what was your involvement to be, sir?
Sure. As the craniofacial trauma surgeon, I frequently treat patients that have fractures of their face, soft tissue injuries, so including skin, muscle, tendon, and they asked that I evaluate him for these injuries, as well as potential foreign bodies that were remaining in his face.
Did there come a time, Doc, when you performed a procedure on Officer Jason Rayner?
Yes. So after I saw him, he was just outside of the operative window for any acute or immediate intervention. But as I followed along over time, his swelling subsided, so it came down. He had a foreign body that was just over his right eyelid and right at the junction between the eyelid and the eyebrow. He had already lost his left eye. So in discussion with the patient's family, I determined that it would be prudent to remove this foreign body to, one, protect his eye, but also as the foreign body became more apparent, it was going to eventually threaten the overlying skin. In particular, the family was also concerned, they saw this very distressing foreign body, which was clearly a fragment of the bullet. And they were with him every day looking at it. And I imagine, I know based on my discussion with them that it was very distressing to them. So they asked that I remove it.
So it was visible protruding from around the right eyebrow area. Is that what you're saying, Doc?
Yeah, it wasn't protruding through the skin, but you could clearly see the bump. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I removed that at bedside. That was the procedure that I performed, as you asked.
When you removed it, what did you do with the bullet?
Sure. So I took this out. I put it in a specimen cup. I kept it with me during the whole procedure. The procedure was performed in the intensive care unit, and I brought that directly outside of his room to the detective from the Daytona Beach Police Department that was right outside of his room.
So you gave it to the detective in the
Yes.
specimen cup?
It went directly from me to the detective in the specimen cup.
Can you do the share screen? Okay. Your Honor, we're going to try to see if it'll work. There may be a camera here.
Over here.
Can you see it here, Doc?
There's no camera there. I don't know what he can see, to be honest.
I'm staring at the backside of a TV. Oh, hold on. Let me zoom in on the witness stand. Yes, I do see that.
Okay, Doc, now, this
what I'm pointing to here. Is that the projectile or the bullet that you removed from Officer Jason Rayner's head from his brow?
It looks exactly like it.
And does this appear to
Oh,
be the
gosh.
specimen cup that you placed in?
It looks exactly like it.
Yes, sir. I believe this has already been introduced, Your Honor, as Exhibit
Thank you.
39. Your Honor, permission to publish it.
Yes.
That was I didn't expect that.
Let's talk
I didn't
about
see that the other day.
reconstruction for a minute. Would you agree that a substantial portion of Officer Jason Rayner's skull had been removed?
Yes. So immediately after the injury, I believe you already heard from Dr. Hahn earlier. He had to remove a portion of his skull. And so with that missing portion of the skull around the brain, but additionally with the missing portion of the facial bones, he would have serious disfigurement, dysfunction. So both of us together planned a reconstructive surgery involving a custom-made implant that was based on the 3D reproduction of his CT scan. And we were waiting for the point where he would become stable enough, the swelling would subside enough so that we could perform this reconstruction.
Did you work with, what was the name of the company that was going to create this?
What's up, George?
I'm not sure what you call it, like an implant?
An implant, yes. Yeah, that was Synthes. Synthes is a Johnson & Johnson subsidiary, I believe.
And had you consulted with Synthes, and were they preparing some models for you to review?
Yeah, these things can take quite a time to produce. So we did have the models, at least the digital images prepared and ready for production. We were just waiting until we got a little bit closer to the reconstruction itself to physically produce them. But they had sent me a plan.
And were these models necessary for you to review to plan the reconstruction?
Yes,
Were they helpful to you?
very, very.
Did they also indicate the nature of injuries
So
and
to me, it sounds like they weren't
consequence
expecting
of the gunshot wound to the head?
Yeah, they more clearly demonstrated the missing bony tissue, areas needing to be reproduced, and it gave me a good replica of the other side of the face projected onto his, the missing portion of his skull and his face so that we could more adequately reconstruct the areas that were missing.
And just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Before we do that, can we approach real quickly, Judge?
With the court reporter?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So JLR must be on his way, made his way back to Florida. Oh, look, he got a rocking chair back there from Cracker Barrel. You can see it's got the emblem in the middle. They were selling those a couple of years ago. Anyway, all the way back to Florida. Don't you love the wire hanging down from the TV? Does that drive y'all nuts? I know everybody has it, but like when you look at it, you're like, why is there a wire strung across my wall? It's like an Eastern European country. Everybody has it though. Everybody has it. You don't think about it until you see it on like something like this. At least I don't. Anyway, JLR here is made his way back to Florida. The little dude in Pennsylvania, the little spider monkey guy that went climbing up over the razor wire, the escapee, he has been caught. He is back in his cell, and That's it. So, for those of you that were watching the last couple of nights, there's been a lot of coverage on that. So now people are going to have to do things. Insomniacs everywhere are awake with dissatisfaction. So, anyway, I love this guy. Like, how would you guys be? I mean, this is a serious thing, right? You're in a courtroom. And here you are, you're a witness. You sit there and go, oh, scratch your head. Oh, now he's paying attention to it. Maybe he hears me. Maybe he's watching me over in the corner. He's like, okay, I need to do this. I need to do that. Don't blink too often. Blink enough. I need to blink. My eyes are drying out. My plastic surgery, I can barely blink. Notice he doesn't touch his nose. He didn't do that. They'll never. Oh no! Yes. No! Oh.
Hey Doc, we're doing a screen.
I can see it. Yep.
Oh wow, that is amazing! Holy cow, this stuff's amazing.
Yeah, can you take that down, please? It hasn't been introduced in evidence. We can't get ahead of ourselves.
Yes,
okay.
Oh, it hasn't
Your
been
Honor,
introduced in evidence. Oh.
I'll go to the camera and show it to him.
Okay. Well,
That's how you screw up.
I don't know whether viewers can see in their screens. What do they see in their screen? Only the witness stand?
Oh, I saw
Only
a
him?
skull.
Only him? Okay, go ahead.
This is. Doc, can you see?
Oh.
Yeah, hold on, let me zoom in there. Yes, I do
Let
see
me
it.
zoom in there.
Let me do it quickly. See those, Doc?
I can see it, I just can't hear you very well, I'm sorry.
Okay, can you see these, Doc?
Yes.
What's that? Well, the bailiff is standing in front of him. If you make it easier, I want every viewer to just look towards the audience. That'll make it just easier, okay?
Doc, you see this one?
Yes, that's part of the reconstructive plan from Cynthia's. Mhm.
Oh, wow.
And this page, same thing, Doc?
Same thing.
And the final one?
Yes.
Wow.
Are these fair and accurate representations of the documents that you got from Cynthia's with evaluating the injuries and to prepare for a reconstruction?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd ask to them be moved into evidence.
Okay, subject to the discussions on the record and your defense position, I'll go ahead and admit the items as evidence.
Procedure matters, yo.
Okay, now you can look back over here.
So it's all about the rules.
May I publish now, Judge?
You may do so.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Doc, can you see that on your screen?
Wow.
I do.
Okay, so basically, I'd like to talk about, I'm facing this and I'm talking the top left image. Could you tell us what that is, sir?
Sure. So the top left image on my screen is the one with a little bit of red. What I see here, this is a CT scan that was repeated after his neurosurgical procedure. So he's had the portion of his skull removed by the neurosurgeon. And this is a 3D representation of his CT scan. So there's been some computerized processing. And as a result, the areas in red are considered to either be bone fragments that are not viable, meaning they're separated to the point where they're not going to be useful, or fragments of the bullet. And so the image on the top with the red are the areas that are going to be removed. And then by the computer, they've been removed right below them in the areas without any red. And that helps them making the reconstruction so they don't take into account things that really don't need to be there.
I had no
Very
idea.
good. And how about, let's go to the right side of the screen. Can you discuss the top and bottom portions of the right side?
Sure. So these are different views of the reconstruction that I was going to perform in conjunction with Dr. Hahn, the neurosurgery. This is the implant is seen in the multiple different colors. It was going to be a 2-piece implant made of PEEK, polyether ketone. It's a strong plastic. And the two different pieces were obviously going to be the two different colors that you see there. Dr. Hahn was going to be placing the darker colored piece over the brain. And then my portion was going to incorporate a lot of the facial bones. You could see the front view on top And then immediately down below it, you see the view from the back of the patient's head.
Doc, this is the next page. Could you start on the left side again, please?
Yeah, on the left side, so on the top, you see the missing portion of the skull. You also see the fractures of the multiple different facial bones. Of particular interest to me, you see the cheekbone. This is the side view from Officer Rayner's left side. So you see the cheek. I guess hopefully you can see me as well as the picture because I'm pointing on my own face, but the area of his cheek has been extensively fractured with fractures kind of going all the way across his face. And then you see the placement of the implant, which reconstructs his orbit. So the areas around the eyeball, in addition to those around his skull and his head protecting his brain.
And before you move on to the right side, Doc, what happened to Officer Rayner's left eye socket and eyeball?
Yeah, so prior to me evaluating him, his eyeball was removed by our ophthalmologist, Dr. Patel. It was deemed to not be viable. And so my portion of the reconstruction was going to recreate his orbit or the bony socket that his eyeball normally sits in so that a prosthesis could fit in there and it would eventually look, as similar as we can make it to the other side. Frequently, if the eyeball is viable, we reconstruct the orbit so that the two eyeballs sit at the same level. And we're also trying to do that with the bony structure that we're creating with this implant, even though he didn't have a viable eyeball there.
Okay, now the right side, please.
The right side, so on the top of the screen, you're seeing essentially a top-down view of his skull with both of the implants there. And then on the bottom, this is a bottom-up view, but they've removed his jawbone so that you can more clearly see each of the bones in the middle and upper thirds of his face there.
Thank you, sir. You can take it off.
Wow. And the officer lived 2 months. And that was reconstruction.
So your plan was to do
Nice
reconstructive surgery on Officer Rayner at some point, pending his recovery, correct?
Exactly.
And of course, you didn't have an opportunity to do the reconstruction, did you?
No, unfortunately, he succumbed to his injuries prior to us being able to get to that point.
Yes, sir. Now, do you consider yourself an expert in ballistics or forensics at all?
No, I'm not. My job is to evaluate a patient when they walk in the door, determine the full extent of their injuries, and develop a treatment plan going forward. My job is not to look backwards and decide what caused that injury unless it's an ongoing insult, say a chemical burn, if the chemical's still there or something. But if this is a trauma, I look at the CT scan, I can tell you where the injuries lay, but it's not to look backwards.
You can say where the injuries lay, but what about issues like proximity of the weapon to the wound? Do you feel like your expertise prepares you to testify to something like that?
So ordinarily I can comment on a few different characteristics that I can observe, burn marks, those sorts of things. Unfortunately, in Officer Rayner's case, I didn't see him for the first 2 weeks. So in addition to the nurses cleaning his wounds, him being in the hospital, he also had a neurosurgical procedure immediately in the area of those wounds prior to me evaluating him about 2 weeks after he presented to the hospital. So my ability to testify about any initial injuries, those sorts of things would be significantly limited in this case.
Okay.
That's like 2 weeks after the day in question.
Into the witness, Judge.
You think I'm an expert?
Yes, any cross-examination.
Oh, I thought they was
Morning, Dr. Prince. Can you hear me okay?
Morning, yes.
Sir, you have a very important skill set in the medical field, but I think you were candid in acknowledging that you're not trained in ballistics. Is that correct?
No, I'm not. I do have some training for facial trauma with ballistics. For instance, I took ballistic trauma courses down in Tampa, and as part of my treatment, I treat patients with that, but the ballistics aspect itself, no.
And there are medical doctors that are trained with a forensic component as well. Do you agree with that?
Yes, there are.
And having a bit of forensic or ballistic training would allow some elaboration on perhaps the positioning of two people involved in an altercation involving a firearm?
have no
I
idea where
wouldn't be
they're
able
going with
to,
this.
you'd have to ask that appropriate expert.
And just, I don't mean to be redundant, but you're not in a position to talk about how your work in this case sheds any light on the positioning of Mr. Wallace or Mr. Rayner that evening, are you?
No.
Is your work in this case such that you can offer any evidence as to how close the gun was to Mr. Rayner at the time that the gun was discharged?
No.
Okay. And you're not able to determine whether these two folks were inches or feet apart at the time of the gunshot?
No.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right,
Was
it a
thank
cinnamon
you.
crunch
Thank you.
bagel from
You're
Panera?
excused at this time.
Thank you.
All right, state your next witness.
Yes, Judge. The statement called Latara Boxman. Yep. Good move.
Actually, on your phone, if you type in the name or like a part of the name, like the first part, something like that, it will highlight on the other person's stuff. Jonathan, that means that my wife just told me I need to order a pair. They've been in my saved list for a long time. Right? I mean, yes. Normally, you have a police officer that's identified himself as an officer. I don't know how that plays.
You'll come around to your left and follow the deputy. You may proceed.
Good morning, ma'am.
Friend.
You're gonna have to talk really loud. And
Yeah, you're going to take it very close to the microphone, so you can bend it down, please. Yeah, thank you. That's good.
Outside voices in here.
Okay.
Can you introduce yourself to the
Use your
jury and
outside
spell your
voice.
last name, please?
My name is Latara Bodison, and it's spelled Bodison.
What county do you live in, ma'am?
Alachua County.
What do you do for work?
I'm a CNA.
Do you know Othal Wallace's brother?
Yes.
What's his name?
Octavius.
How do you know Octavius?
She's very, very soft-spoken. You have to project a little more.
His name is Octavius
What's Octavius' last name?
Wallace.
How do you know Octavius Wallace?
He's my boyfriend.
Let me bring you back to, it would have been June 23rd of 2021. Were you dating Octavius back then, ma'am?
Yes.
At some point that night, did you receive a call from Octavius, or were you asked to pick him up or help him use a car?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that and what happened?
It was late. He called asking me to come get him. I went and picked him up, and that was it.
Okay, well, let's break it down a little bit. Where were you at when you received the phone call?
I was at home.
Where was Octavius?
The place exactly I can't recall.
Did you pick up Octavius by yourself?
No.
Who was Octavius with?
Later found
Yeah.
his brother.
Was it
You
with
type
Wallace?
in
Yes.
the name. You don't see the highlight.
What were you
They
asked
do.
to do at that time?
I discovered that.
To go
I
to
see next to
Georgia.
the White Rabbit. I was like, you can
Who were you
see.
going to drive to Georgia?
Othal.
What was Octavius there too?
Sorry.
Yes.
What kind of car did you have?
Yeah,
I have a
run everything out.
Toyota
I have
Camry.
Apple, by the way.
Who was driving the car initially when you started? Was it you?
Yes.
Do you know where everybody sat in the car? Where did Octavius sit and where did Othal sit?
Othal was in the back seat, and Octavius was in the passenger seat.
Now, when you left your residence that night, it was dark out.
Yes.
Did you know exactly where you were going to be going in Georgia?
No.
Did somebody tell you? Or did they put it in the GPS for you?
To get to Georgia, no, but once we got into Georgia, I don't remember if there was a GPS or if it was just voice instructions.
Do you recall on your drive up there if you took the highway or not?
Yeah, we took 75.
And you took that north into Georgia?
Yes.
Can you describe was
Took the
Othal
midnight train.
Wallace, his demeanor normal?
To me, it was normal because I don't know him like that.
Okay. He wasn't upset, wasn't crying,
No,
didn't seem hysterical in any way?
no,
At any time when you were driving him in the car, did he say that he shot a police officer in self-defense?
no.
Just a moment, Judge.
Yes.
Did you ultimately drop Mr. Wallace off in Georgia?
Yes,
Do you remember what kind of area it was, or was it dark?
it was dark.
When Othal Wallace got out of the car, did Octavius stay in the car with you?
Yes, that I can recall. Yeah,
And what did you guys do when you left that location in Georgia?
came back to Gainesville.
Did you did you have a phone back then, ma'am?
Yes,
And was your phone number 850-812-9031?
yes,
At the time you drove Othal Wallace up there to Georgia, did you have any idea that he was involved in killing a police officer or shooting a police officer?
no,
The location you picked him up in initially when you were in Alachua County, was it somewhere in Gainesville area?
yes.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions.
Okay, any cross-examination?
Morning, man.
Morning.
You didn't know Mr. Wallace, did you?
No,
I think maybe you'd only met him one time.
yes,
All right. And when you drove up there, it was late at night, right?
correct.
Dark,
Yes,
very dark. All right. And nobody really talked the whole way up there, did they?
no,
So, no, and hopefully he'd asked you, the state had asked if he said, hey, I shot a cop in self-defense. He never said anything about anything, did he?
correct.
And as far as the demeanor, he was sitting in the back seat, correct?
Correct.
Did you keep an eye on him the whole time and see what he was, how he was acting?
No,
Just drove straight ahead, kept your eye on the road?
yes.
I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much. May the witness be excused. State. Yes, sir. Defense. Yes. You're released from the subpoena. Thank you. Next witness.
Amanda Stevens.
Wish to take a stand-up break, you're welcome to do that.
Yeah.
Sit in? Yeah. Do you mind doing me a favor, Matt? Bathroom. All rise for jurors, please.
Did you say bathroom break?
Take about 5 minutes, okay?
Yeah, Ozone's brother. And Volstorm. Look up Vampires, Vampliers. They're made in Japan. They're made for taking out screws that have been stripped, like the head's been stripped. And if you don't, if you see some before you get them, look up Japanese engineer pliers or engineering pliers, and make sure they're made in Japan, and they're the same ones, but they have the Van Pliers is an American company. So I mean, you get the American warranty, you get the American company stuff, but they're all made in Japan. You want to make sure you get the ones made in Japan, and they're just neat. And guess what? I don't have any, so I can't attest for anything. Ooh, who was that got them? Was that Jonathan? Yeah. Oh, I got another thing for you if you like that. Look up Knipex, Knipex, Cobra, like Cobra, XS. You'll dig that. It's the only cool pliers I have. But it's because I like everyday carry stuff. And these are made in Germany. That's the whole key to these. America doesn't make tools anymore. And if America's not making them, it's not going to be long before the other countries, other first world countries, don't make them. And in tools, that means Japan or Germany. Those are the only first world countries. Thailand's good, but you go in Thailand, you got to be careful. And you got to get your stuff as quickly as you can before they go back to, excuse me, before they get, how would you say that? De-democracied. They're going to get de-democracied by China. Hell world we live in, isn't it? No, I don't have any. That's the whole key to it. I don't have any. So I just look at the pretty ones. It's like there's a dude that drives around have you guys seen that new body style Corvette? I'm not a Corvette guy. Holy cow, I love this thing. It looks, every time I see it, I'm like, it's like, oh my gosh, I think it looks like a Ferrari or something. And there's a guy that drives around town in an orange one. I love everything about that car. Yeah, Thailand's a different place. Oh, I'm sorry, Taiwan. Yes. Thailand has Bangkok. That's how you remember it. I don't know what Taiwan has. Taiwan, though, they make good stuff. Actually, you know your socket wrenches? So, stubby, right? That's like a real small one. That's another deal. Man, I'm going to have to do that. I keep saying I'm going to. I haven't yet. I love everyday carry. I love small micro tools of high quality. Insert joke all you want to. Anyway, micro socket wrenches, like a quarter inch that are real small. There's none made in the United States. And actually, if you can, find Craftsman off eBay. Get them while you can. Man, I had a chance to get them for like $9. I didn't. I've already got two. But I don't know how I have two. Still, what matters is like oh, what's that brand? Veer. It's W. I've got this. Look what I'm looking at. This is how bad I am. Vera. Spelled W-E-R-A. Like their bits, they're made in Germany or Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia, they're brothers. They're all unified at once a few years ago, like 1930s. And if you look at this stuff on a regular basis, you get a bag of these things for $2. So, anyway, they have a really cool socket wrench, little mini snubby deal, made in Taiwan.
Ready for the jury now?
Yeah.
Yes. The defendant is present. Get the jury, please.
If you've got if you know some, let me know. I can't find anything. Craftsman opened a
Can you get the witness inside?
Plant in Texas like 2 years ago, and they've already closed it. Oh, the best. Do you guys need locking pliers? Malco Eagle. They bought the original Vice grips plant. Best one you need. Project Farm. If you ever watch YouTube guy, he's awesome. He's got all that stuff. Project Farm did the Vice grip test. Oh my gosh, they're awesome. They've already gone out of business. Been up like 2-3 years. Oh, yeah, Snap-on Mac. I don't consider Snap-on. Oh, what's the other one? Is it Williams? Williams is owned by the same company that Snap-on is. Williams, get those instead of Snap-on because it's just a different name brand, but they're like half as much. But yeah, a lot of that stuff, if you can find a German version of it, I get that. They're cheaper. Germany might be kind of like Taiwan. Get it while you can. Get while the quality's good. Like knives. I love German knives.
All rise for the jury.
Oh, and outside of the kitchen, it's hard to find a good German knife.
The jury is present. You may be seated. State, call your next witness.
Amanda Stevens.
Yeah, absolutely, right? But it's something like this. You know, that's your everyday carry kit. They make little holsters for this thing. Actually, there's a whole YouTube world about how these pliers and a pocket knife have replaced the Leatherman.
Be sure to speak loud and clear into the microphone so everyone can hear what you have to say, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
State, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
For half the price, I'd get them. Check out Project Farm. There's a lot
Ms.
of
Stevens, could you
good
please
websites.
state your entire name and spell it for the court reporter?
My name is Amanda
I
Stevens,
don't have any tools.
A-M-A-N-D-A. Last name is S-T-E-P-H-E-N-S.
And Ms. Stevens, what do you do for a living?
I'm a senior crime intelligence analyst at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement out of our Orlando regional office.
How long have you been with that DLE?
Almost 19 years.
What are your specific duties in working with that DLE?
For the last 12 years or so, I have been assigned to our electronic surveillance support team, which is a task force specializing in electronic surveillance utilized to aid in fugitive apprehension and case support.
Can you tell the jury about your educational background, please?
I have a 4-year degree from the University of Central Florida.
Can you tell the jury what historical cellular records analysis is? It's a mouthful.
Yeah, sure. What we do in historical cell record analysis and mapping is take the phone records from the phone company. So not from the device or from any other resource, but the original records from the phone company, and analyze them for usage, pattern, communication activity patterns, as well as associates. And additionally, if there is location available, map that as well to have a general area of where the device is located.
And do you have specialized training in cellular record analysis?
I do, yes.
Tell the jury about that, please.
Since I've been in the unit, I have about 300 hours of classroom training received. I'm additionally an instructor for cell record analysis and mapping across the state of Florida, and the testifying witness for the state of Florida.
Are you familiar with the current cellular technologies utilized by the major cellular carriers in the U.S.?
Yes, I am.
It's got a 1/4-inch hex to.
Are you familiar with how these providers keep their records?
I am, yes.
Awesome.
And the records you use to potentially map the location of a cellular device, are those called call detail records?
Yeah, so universally, from the phone companies, they're referred to as CDRs for call detail records. And then each company may have a specific name for each file type, but commonly just across the board referred to as CDRs.
How many times do you think you've used call detail records or CDRs to map the location of a cellular device?
Thousands.
And you said you've had an opportunity on multiple occasions to testify about this subject matter before?
I have, yes.
And have you presented results of your cellular analysis in court before?
Yes, I have.
At this time, I'd ask this witness be able to give opinion testimony regarding cellular analysis and the call detail records.
Without objection, admitted, allowed to express an opinion.
Ms. Stevens, if I pick up my cell phone and I make a phone call, can you explain to the jury the actual technology and what happens that allows that call to connect?
So while your phone is powered on, it's constantly communicating with the network. We refer to that commonly as surveying. It's surveying the environment to determine where the closest antennas are, where the strongest signal is coming from, and if at any point you need to use your cell phone, where would it connect to? So that's all happening in the background constantly. That's why our batteries don't last forever, right? And when you need to either then make or receive a call, your phone is instantaneously going to connect to the antenna that's providing the best quality of service, using its internal antennas, connecting to the external antennas that are commonly placed on cell sites or cell towers. Sometimes in rural environments, their antennas are still on those large metal structures that we think of when we think of cell towers. And sometimes in more urban environments, they're either hidden or disguised in the landscape. And sometimes we won't even realize there's an antenna there, but typically on the tallest or largest structure in an area, a flagpole or a church steeple, the top of a building, things like that.
Now, Ms. Stevens, with the towers themselves and the antennas on the towers, does each provider own their own antennas or own towers? Sorry.
So the antennas themselves are owned by the provider. The location where the antennas are affixed may be co-owned or owned by an independent vendor, and each of the phone companies are renting the space on it. So sometimes we will have only one company sell antenna at a location, and sometimes, especially in more populated areas, we will see all of the major carriers sharing the location. And if you were to go out and look at it, you would see multiple antennas on a single location.
So on the same tower, you could say having antennas for Sprint and for Metro PCS.
Well, not Sprint anymore, but yeah, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile.
I'll use AT&T and Verizon as my example.
Yes, sir.
Now, are the towers designed to be spaced out in a certain way?
So they're spaced out based on the need of coverage. So again, in more rural environments, they're significantly further away and the antennas can reach significantly further. So we would expect to see 6, 7, 10, 12 miles of coverage off of a single antenna. The more urban of an environment you're in, that becomes significantly smaller. We would expect, say in like Orlando, Tampa areas to see about a mile and a half outside of like the downtown, and in downtown to be sometimes like as small as a 1/4 of a mile of coverage per antenna. So it really depends on the landscape, and that's how the phone companies go in and lay out their network, dependent on the structural landscape as well as the population landscape of an area.
And are they designed so that the coverage from towers will overlap?
Yeah, so they overlap along all the edges. So we will see them placed significantly at strategic distances to allow for edge-to-edge overlap. So that way the old kind of dropped calls that we all used to experience isn't really a thing anymore. Very often, you might have some spots now and then. But those overlaps on all the boundaries allow for a seamless transition. So if you are either stationary in an overlap area, you may go back and forth between 2 or 3 antennas. Or if you're moving, as you reach the edge of one coverage, you would seamlessly hand off to the next in whatever direction you're traveling. So at any edge, we would expect an overlap of coverage.
So let me ask about the handoff.
Sir.
If I was driving up here from Daytona Beach, Florida, and I was on my cell phone from Daytona Beach all the way up to the St. Augustine area,
yes, sir.
Would my phone be handing off to different towers as I progressed up I-95?
Oh, for certain. Yes, it would.
And you said that cell phones typically connect to the strongest, or they do connect to the strongest signal. That's what they're always looking for.
Yes, it's the best quality of service. So the strongest, cleanest channel available, which is typically going to be the one it's closest to, but there may be times where it's slightly further, depending on direction or need in that area.
Can obstructions or a physical object also cause an issue with it not connecting to the closest tower?
Sure. We see obstructions more in like downtown or urban environments with taller buildings, metal, steel, concrete, glass. And then we also see enhanced signal, so like the opposite effect, near water. So it would go further than you would expect it for 2 reasons. There's nobody really using the signal on top of the water, and the water is strengthening it and kind of pushing it across. So we kind of see the 2 different sides of the cell signal, both obstruction and enhancement.
In terms of the phone companies, what types of data do they keep within those call detail records that you were talking about earlier?
So they keep a lot of data, and sometimes it's not all in one file, it may be in multiple files, but typically across the board, what we will see is date, time, duration, both numbers involved in the communication, an indicator of which direction, was it incoming or outgoing. Sometimes call features, like was it answered, was it not answered? So sometimes, depending on the carrier, you get some of that information. And then specifically, if it's requested in your legal demand, your warrant, or your court order, the location information. So what antenna was utilized for each of those events.
And in your work, at least for this case, did you have call detail records that you mapped manually?
I did, yes.
What does that mean when you map it manually?
So even though there is software available specifically to law enforcement that can analyze and map cell phone records, it's not always perfect. And when you trust a computer software to do it for you, there can be errors and mistakes. So we do find that mapping by hand, so taking the information from the call detail records along with a master list of all the antennas in the region from the phone company and applying that together on a map that we are placing the information on, it's a more accurate representation of the coverage of the antennas that are being used. Because now we are measuring how far out all the antennas are from each other to get a more accurate coverage area for each of the antennas.
And in this case, were you provided some call detail records to map?
Yes, I was.
What call do you know the numbers that you were provided, the call detail records?
May I refer to my notes?
I should look at our notes, Your Honor.
Let me do so.
Thank you, Your Honor.
She's good.
Yeah, so I received 2 sets of phone records, one from T-Mobile and one from AT&T.
And the ones for T-Mobile, the phone records you received, were those for a phone number ending in 6399?
They were, yes.
And were those for Othal Wallace?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move pursuant to the business records certification previously filed with the court, the call detail records for 850-812-9031 from AT&T.
Okay, can you repeat the number again?
Yes, it's 850-812-9031, and that states X as in Xerox.
Okay, any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Without objection, admitted as evidence.
And that second number I read off, the records that just went in, was that the other number and records you were provided?
Correct. Those are the AT&T records that I analyzed as well.
And those were for purportedly Latera Bodison?
Yes.
And were you given any locations for purposes of your mapping as well?
Yes, I was. I was provided 3 locations of interest for the time frame in question that I was asked to map.
And what were those locations?
They were 133 Kingston Avenue in Daytona Beach. The second address was 7107 Northwest 4th Boulevard in Gainesville, which is a Home Depot. And then the last address that I was given was 8562 Smith James Road in Snellville, Georgia.
And were you also given a time frame to look at the records for these particular numbers?
Yes, I was.
For the number ending in 6399, what was the time frame you looked at?
Approximately 7:30 p.m. on the evening of June 23rd, 2021, through the end of the records. So about 5:30 in the morning, June 24th.
And what about for the other number, Ms. Bodison's number ending in 9031?
For that number, it was asked for about whatever time it was at or near the Home Depot in Gainesville. So it started just shy of 1 a.m. the morning of June 24th through about noon that same day. So June 24th, 21.
And with the call detail records, the addresses you had, and the time frames, were you able to map the movements of these cellular devices?
I was, yes.
And did you create a report which was provided to the state attorney's office with that information?
I did, yes.
I don't believe there's an objection to states PP coming into evidence as the next numbered exhibit in Stephen's report.
No objection. Admitted as evidence.
Judge, permission to publish and have the witness step down.
May? Make sure you stand on this side.
Yes, sir.
I have this, Ms. Stevens. Actually, I'll be standing on that other side. So you're not blocking the chair. Starting with this photograph, this is an item that's already in evidence. Is this part of the call detail records related to the number 6399 or the number purported to be Othal Wallace's?
Yes, so it's actually a separate piece, but it's part of like the package feedback for the subscriber page. With all the account information, you can see here the number is right here, and then all of the account details.
So this was part of the records that you received from T-Mobile for the number 6399?
Correct.
And does it have a subscriber name?
It does.
Who is the subscriber for that number?
Othal Wallace. Listed there and there.
Now we're going into your report. Is this just some of the information we already discussed, the time range, the 2 numbers, things of that nature?
Correct. So on the cover page, it's the time frame, the phone numbers in question, a note on the time zones, because the records are not provided in local time, so you have to convert them. And then additionally, since this is 2 separate numbers, they're color coded. So throughout the entire presentation, you see images in the black lines and the black shapes. It's always going to be the T-Mobile phone, and anything with the blue lines and the blue shapes is always going to be the AT&T phone.
So again, and this is the number that the subscriber is?
Correct.
And can you just tell the jury a little more about the time zone? So the records come in UTC?
Yeah, so the records are returned to us in UTC, which stands for Coordinated Universal Time. It's the time standard for the entire world. So it's basically
Greenwich Mean Time.
It's the same as Greenwich Mean Time
Anybody want to see if Ozone answers?
It's noon time. And then for Eastern, we have to adjust off of it. So during the summer, we are 4 hours.
Hey, Jenny, how are you?
So whatever is on the record, we would need to subtract that 4 hours, and then that's what time it was here at that time.
Now let's go to the first slide. First, just tell the jury, what is this information at the top?
So these two lines at the top are screenshots, so image captures, of what the T-Mobile records look like when we open that. The Excel digital file that's provided to us from T-Mobile. When you open it, that's exactly what they look like. So it's all the call information line by line.
And in mapping this, and this is for Othal Wallace's phone, the
Correct.
6399.
Yes, so it's the T-Mobile phone.
When you mapped these calls, first just tell us what time range we're looking at and where these calls were, what towers they were utilizing.
So first, again, the records are in UTC. So even though it says 623, 2327, and 2344, we do have to back it up a little bit. So on every page, you will have a time conversion with an asterisk. So here locally, it was 1927, so 7:27 p.m. And then the second call was at 7:44 p.m. Eastern. And then this is the call information, so date, time, duration, direction, the numbers involved in the call, some information about the subscriber and the device, was it completed or not completed successfully, and then the last portion is the antenna numbers. So using this information over here, we're able to match, these blue icons are all antennas for T-Mobile, we're able to match which antenna was in use for each call. And that's what's being represented by the pie-shaped wedges of the map.
And in terms of the antennas, would each, so for T-Mobile, would this have 3 antennas, so it would be technically 3 pies and covering?
Yeah, so for the most part, everything in our jurisdiction is divided into 3. So every cell site is represented by 3 sectors. And each sector is its own antenna, so it can be larger or smaller coverage than the one on the same cell site because it's facing its own direction and it's operating independently, even though it's located at the same location and represented by the same antenna number, and just the sector ID is indicating which one of the 3 is utilized.
Now, just so the jury's aware, these, again, going to this one here, this pie shape you have, that doesn't represent the actual coverage area, right?
Correct. So the antennas are emitting radio frequency. So that's obviously not something that's a hard and fast line. It's not going to shut off when you go too far past it. So what we're seeing with the lines is a basic visual representation of what that coverage area would look like. Especially along the edges, we would expect it to be more like a wave, more like a cloud-like boundaries. But for a basic visual representation, this general area and this general area are going to be covered by that.
And in each one of the slides we're going to go through, so we don't go through it every time, you'll have the actual data at the top that you used and then the map.
Correct. So the call records are always going to be at the top. When we get to parts where there's both phone records, you will see both at the top, the time conversion, and then the map on the page.
So again, with these 2 calls, what were you able to see with these 2 calls?
So at 7:27, the first call that we looked at, it was an outgoing call made from this general area. So this is I-4, and this is 44, and this is DeLand.
So this is I-4 that's going towards, you kept it on I-4, you head to Orlando.
Yep, so if you go this way, you go towards Orlando, and go this way, you're going towards Daytona Beach. And then the second call, so 17 minutes later, we see the device utilize this antenna. So this is I-4, this is 95, and you can see Port Orange right here. So a little bit south of Daytona.
Let's go to the next slide.
Sure.
First, what time frame are we looking at for these 2 calls?
So now we're looking a little bit later. It's 1952, so 7:52 p.m. through 8:11 p.m. And we again have 2 calls, both outgoing from the target device to other parties. And for these calls, the first one utilizes this antenna here. I apologize, the box was in my way. The first call, so the one at 7:52, is utilizing this one. And then we go back to this one for the 8:11 call.
And just for some reference points, is this the Daytona Beach airport here?
So this is the airport right here. This is International Speedway Boulevard. This is 95. This is US 1. This is A1A. So this is kind of like your main east and west drag through Daytona.
Do we see the Kingston address marked on that map?
You can now see the Kingston address marked by the red icon. So it's not quite in our coverage area, but it's definitely in the area where the device is at this point, generally.
Let's go to the next slide. What are we looking at here? What time frame?
So now we're a little bit later. It's 20:31 hours. So by 8:31 p.m. and then the next call at 8:52 p.m., both incoming this time. The device utilizes this antenna here, which is right off of A1A, and facing back towards Daytona, so back towards the west. And you can now see that it clearly covers the area of the Avenue address.
So the phone was in the coverage area of the Kingston address?
Correct.
Okay. Now the location's kind of changed here, fair to say?
Yeah, so you are now 3 minutes after, I apologize, 2 minutes after the last call that we just saw that was occurring on an antenna over here facing this way and was clearly covering the Kingston address. And now by 8:54, the device is traveling west and it utilizes first this antenna at 8:54. At 8:56, it utilizes this antenna twice, 56 and 58. And then by 9:01 p.m., the device is utilizing this antenna, and this is 95.
So the device appears to be heading north up Interstate 95.
Correct, and at the 7 minutes, we traveled across this way and then this way. It was a very quick progression.
And the next slide. First, geographically, what area are we looking at here?
So we have 95 straight in the middle. We can see South Palm Close and Flagler Beach come into play. So we are now north of where we just saw, and just a few minutes later.
So consistent with continuing to travel north up Interstate 95?
Correct. And we also see it traveling, hitting in a northern pattern. So first utilizing this antenna and then utilizing this antenna. So the pattern of usage also comes into play for movement analysis. What order were the antennas utilized?
A lot of calls here. What area are we looking at first?
So we're still in Palm Coast, but we're now north of Flagler, so the northern end of Palm Coast, progressing north again, and the call pattern follows the same. Starting at the bottom of the page, this is the first calls, then we use this antenna, and then we use this antenna facing southwest, and then you can see the same cell site, but it's the antenna that's facing northwest is utilized. So again, a south to north progression with 95 being our main thoroughfare.
And what time is the last call that's on this map?
So this one is 21:14 through 21:17, so that's 9:14 to 17 p.m.
Going to the next slide, are we up in the St. Augustine area now?
Correct, so you can see St. Augustine, still along 95, and we're 30 or so minutes later. And again, utilizing first the southern facing antennas and then the northwestern facing antennas with our 95 coverage.
Guys, I'm trying to get screenshots of these. I'll put
Go
it
to
over
the next
in
slide.
Discord.
So what are we looking at? What area are we looking at in this map?
So this, we're getting up towards Jacksonville, South Jacksonville area. You can see here, you can see Ponte Vedra right here. And again, we have 95 up through the middle. And again, the tower and antenna usage is a southern to northern progression.
And what about here? What area are we looking at?
So this is kind of south west Jacksonville.
Toy Box Brain, how you doing, bud?
This is this is 95 over here, and so this is like the outer kind of byway to go around.
Chris, how are you?
If you wanted to go around downtown Jacksonville, you would come around this way.
I know.
I believe it's 295. I apologize, I don't know, but it's labeled right here. It's just a little blurry. And so again, we're using a northwestern movement. So starting here, then here, been here over the course of about 15 minutes.
Heading towards Interstate 10.
Heading towards 10, yep.
Let's go to our next slide. What are we looking at here?
So this is like an hour and 10-ish minutes later, and now we see something different, because now we are on 75, so more towards the center of the state, Ocala, upwards to Georgia area. And now we're traveling south. So we came across 10, presumably because we don't have any calls for about an hour. But we're back, at least we know for certain we're back along 75. And now we're seeing antenna usage starting from the north and traveling south. So now we're heading south on 75.
Would that be in the direction of Gainesville?
So from where we're starting in Columbia County, yes, you would be heading towards Gainesville at this point. And we can see it in this slide even better. We're at 11:46 p.m. to 11:54, so just only about 8 minutes or so. But again, we see a steady progression from north tower antenna usage to our south antenna usage, and then we do see our Home Depot. So we're getting very close to Gainesville and the location of the Gainesville Home Depot.
Going to the next slide, what do we see here?
The next 30 minutes or so, and again, a north to south progression. So the device actually, 75 right in the middle here, travels along that area and actually bypasses the location of the Home Depot and travels a little bit further south at 12:29 a.m.
And now, is this the first slide where we're seeing both colors?
Correct. So starting at 12:58, we have the T-Mobile device and the AT&T device in the same general area. So now we can see the Home Depot is right here, and we have overlapping antenna usage between the blue AT&T phone, so those are these records right here, and the black T-Mobile phone with the records right here.
And again, that's the phone for Ms. Bodison.
Correct.
Going to the next slide, what are we seeing from the defendant's phone records here?
So now we start to have activity mutually between both devices. So first we're seeing north of Gainesville. Now we're traveling back the other direction, headed north. 75 is right in the middle. And again, based on our antenna usages, we can see that we're utilizing antennas in a south to north progression about 1:30 in the morning.
And what about on this side?
On this slide, about 30 minutes after that activity, even further north, here we can see 10, here we can see 75. We have the AT&T phone utilizing antennas in North Florida.
And go ahead, what about this side?
Yeah, so for this one, it's really nice because we can see within 3 minutes of each other, both devices are along 75, and this right here, this yellow line is the Florida-Georgia border. So we can see 75 from Florida into Georgia. We have both devices within a very quick time proximity, utilizing antennas covering the highway. And that's about 20 minutes after 2 in the morning.
And I believe the next slide is just going to be for demonstrative purposes.
Okay.
And it's kind of unfortunate that the share bar is down here, but this 75.
Yeah, so you can see 75 comes, it's really tiny right here, you can see it, and it comes up this way, right next to Valdosta and Tifton, right outside of Macon, and it comes this way, heading towards Atlanta. So that's 75.
And we'll get to the mapping in a second, but where will the phone and what major roadway will the phone?
I love the maps of cell phone towers. I love seeing how that stuff works. It amazes me.
When you see the phones take the 285 bypass and then take 20.
You can tell I'm a simple man. Oh.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so movement on the T-Mobile, the T-Mobile records didn't have anything during this time period, so we're relying on the AT&T records to look at our movement. But what we can see for this 50 minutes or so is steady south to north progression, utilizing the antennas.
T-Mobile used to not keep your text message
based on
records.
timing, I wouldn't imagine.
I don't know if they do, if they do now, but they used to not.
AT&T phone.
Again, heading towards the Atlanta area.
Correct.
And on this slide, what are we looking at?
The same thing. So about 4 o'clock in the morning to 4:40, starting way down here at the bottom, going just outside of Macon, staying along 75, and then we also see it right here, so heading to the north as well.
And on this slide, do we see both phones being mapped?
Yeah, so for this one, again, within close proximity to each other, within about 6 minutes, both phones utilized a shared cell site. So we can see an example of, even though they're different phone companies, the structure where the antennas are located are physically the same. And then we have the AT&T antenna for the blue device and the T-Mobile antennas for the black lines for the T-Mobile device, on the same structure at the same location, but using their independent antennas.
Is this the slide where they start to go down 20, the two phones?
Yes, correct. So we can see this is 675, which is a shoot off of 75 that kind of goes to the east, and then hits 285, which is the bypass for downtown Atlanta. So it goes up and around. So we see 675, 285, and then this is 20, which heads us. It's pretty east and west, but it definitely is an eastward direction for the phones.
On this map, are we seeing the third location that you were asked to identify?
Correct. So about 5:30, between 5:30 and 5:50 the morning of June 24th, we see the AT&T device approaching, and then at a shared coverage area between the two antennas, that would cover our Smith James Road address.
And again, this blue is for Ms. Bodison's phone.
Correct.
And on this slide, what are we looking at?
So for this one, approaching 6 o'clock in the morning, so within 8 minutes of the last activity that we just saw that was covering the Smith James Road address, and within 8 minutes, we see it traveling kind of southwest away.
Is this the
again,
prosecutor's witness? Is that right?
Away from the Smith James Road, so very quick.
So this phone was not in the coverage area of Smith James Road very long?
No.
Okay. And what about in this slide?
So what we see in this slide is kind of telling of two things. Location-wise, we see the T-Mobile over here, pretty close to the Smith James Road, but not covering it. Very clearly not covering it, but in the same general area along 20.
Did you get a name of that desk?
And then we see the AT&T phone has already left the area. So when looking at it map-wise, it looks a little odd that one's all the way over here and one's this way. But when we look at it analysis-wise, we see that these two calls on the T-Mobile phone, even though they're listed as outgoing, those are outgoing to voicemail. So that is not requiring the user to do anything to the phone. It's being routed by the network. And this is T-Mobile's voicemail number. So the phone is on, it's powered on, but these calls were not answered. So this phone is sitting in this area, not being answered.
So it doesn't appear as if this phone made it up into the area of Smith James Road where the coverage area of Smith James Road.
I would, in my opinion, say no, because on the last time we did see the phone, about an hour or so prior, using the same antenna, it was an outgoing call, a connected call that they actually spoke. There was some duration, and it was in the same area, so it never left that area. So I would say that that device never made it to Smith James. Probably was not any further than where it's shown on the map right now.
Now, I'm going to go through these next couple slides a little quickly.
Yes, sir.
Will they essentially show that Ms. Bodison's phone progressed back
Good,
down
Chief.
75 to Gainesville?
Correct. So we have no more activity on the T-Mobile device. So what we are seeing is the last one we saw where it was stationary just outside of Smith James. And then the AT&T spot is traveling now north to south along 75 coming out of Atlanta.
So you say no more activity on the defendant's phone, there's no more incoming or outgoing calls?
Correct.
It's just a continued progression down
Correct.
75?
So 7:30 in the morning to about 8:20 in the morning, steady call activity and data usage also in the absence of actual calls that early in the morning along the way.
And I think I might just jump a couple to?
Yeah, same thing. Just kind of goes, and then by 11:56, so just shy of noon, we have the device back in Gainesville.
And that's it. You can return to the witness stand. Thank you, ma'am. Stevens, I actually don't have any more questions for you. I will tend to the witness.
No, I don't need
Oh, yeah, my demonstrative aid.
Oh, gosh.
Ms. Stevens, the 51 Children's Way, that was the address that Mr. Wallace's phone was registered to?
I believe so, but I don't have that in front of me.
Okay. Well, if that was what was up on the screen just a little while ago, would that be correct?
If that's what was listed, I just don't recall what it said.
Okay.
But that would have been whatever T-Mobile had on file in the subscriber.
Okay. And are you aware that 51 Children's Way is a foster home where Mr. Wallace grew up?
No, I had no idea.
Right. And I just want to be clear that what you just told us is Mr. Wallace went from Daytona Beach to Gainesville to Snellville, Georgia.
Ooh.
Through Jacksonville and then back south.
Okay, all the way up through there.
The
And then
devices, yes,
But he ended up going from Daytona to Snellville eventually.
correct.
Thanks for clearing that up for us.
Zigzag.
Yes.
Because Gainesville's to the west
you, Your Honor.
of Jacksonville.
Yes.
15 minutes recess. All rise for the jury.
What do you say, 15-minute recess?
No.
Who's doing it, Sean?
Jury's out, court's in recess.
All right. I like this judge, his like time pattern. By the way, I really like that judge's chair. Can we talk about that for a second? Why don't office chairs look like that anymore? You can't find leather hardly. And the high wingback, man, that's so nice.
So I have a
Yeah. Okay. So you're glad the defense isn't going on. No, I mean, if you're up there, you want your defense to say everything, right? Everything in the thesaurus. But this is hard for me to try to wrap my mind around. How are they? Unless, let me take this back. I'm going to answer myself, then I'm going to ask a question. Unless they want to go to an appeal, and they're asking the questions, well, they're not objecting and stuff, are they? Is it an automatic appeal? I wish I knew somebody that I could talk to about this, but I don't. Knows how like death penalty and stuff like that works. Anyway, my question is what happens in appeal? How much of the record gets to go? Because you get to appeal mistakes made in the trial. That's why you have objections. That's why you have long throw everything out there, defenses. That said, watching this, I like to watch this as a layperson, right? Just watch, sit back. I mean, I start every broadcast. I tell you the reason why we're watching this, why I'm interested in this. So you know this. It's Fourth Amendment. It's death penalty. Boom, boom. Crime mapping, stuff like that matters. But what is the defense thinking about right now? Holy cow, man! I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Where have they said stuff that makes you think, oh yeah, Ozone was defending himself? Have they established the elements of self-defense? What are the elements of self-defense in Florida? You think I would know that? I'll tell you what, preemptive self-defense in Florida is, do not go to Slurwoods in Jacksonville. Sherwoods is the name of the bar, but it's, locals call it Slurwoods because it is potent. Like, I get Dr. Pepper, you're like, whoa, I can taste the roots.
Yeah, it's gonna go.
Oh, here's a good article. Self-defense. Use of force against a law enforcement officer in Florida. Use of deadly force is not justified in resisting an arrest by a person who is known to be or appears to be a law enforcement officer. So if that's true, okay. On the other hand, if the law enforcement officer uses excessive force to make an arrest, then the use of reasonable force is justified to defend the defendant or another, but only to the extent that the defendant reasonably believes such force is necessary. Now, that's common law. That's true about every state. The defendant must be judged by the circumstances in which he was surrounded at the time the force was used. Although the danger need not be actual, the appearance of danger must have been so real that a reasonable person who is cautious and prudent, acting under the same circumstances, would have believed that the danger could be avoided only through the use of that force. Now, that's funny because Ozone has a lot of GoFundMe set up in his name for self-defense, for paying for his legal bills.
What's that?
They have clowns all over the bar. Little clown glass figurines. The defendant has no duty to retreat from a place where he has a right to be and has the right to stand his ground and meet force with force. Okay, that might be the part where they're claiming self-defense here, including deadly force. However, I have a however. Let me read this before I start butting in. If he reasonably believes such force is necessary to prevent great bodily harm or death to himself or another to prevent the commission of a forcible felony. Okay, that makes a little bit of sense now, how they were so obsessed over the holster the other day. And like what the duty belt, what all's on there, everything else. Because did Ozone act in reasonable self-defense? Because he had a right to be there, okay? And the cop was pulling his gun. So Ozone shot the sheriff. But he didn't shoot the deputy. That's what they're arguing. Now, what they haven't gotten to is criminal mapping and Fourth Amendment, because they have a policy in Daytona Beach that high crime areas, it's prudent for the officer to ask suspicious looking characters, the usual suspects, whether or not they belong in that area. That's a question. You know what? That brings up another one. Where do you belong? I know I've been in a lot of places I don't belong. I've been told that before. We don't serve you here. We're not going to serve you here because you don't belong here. I get told maybe 4 or 5 or 7 times. Oh, jeez. Oh, I'm falling. Holy cow. So let's think. How would you handle this as defense? Does subsequent actions of Ozone's, leaving the scene of a crime, we'll say, is that a hurdle he needs to overcome? I don't know these answers. I've never done anything criminal. Man, I never did anything criminal. I graduated law school, and I worked in a law office for government. That was our client. Or, yeah, that's the way I'll say it. Sorry. I don't want to dox myself on it. Because there's a lot of stuff I can't talk about. I may have said that I shouldn't be. By the way, so when they go to lunch, they do about an hour and a half lunch. I think I may stop this stream and start it back for after lunch. Only because the streams are going so long, you can't edit them on YouTube once they're over 6 hours. And so if something happens that brings one down, I can't take something out. So I'll give an hour break. What do you guys think? Maybe I'll be able to find your ways back. Awesome. Ballstorm approves. That's all I need. All right. I need to start setting up an afternoon stream. So.
This is gonna be the phone number. This one name.
That's fine, I put your CD right there. It's all from me. Thinking I can't remember. If you weren't rich, all the numbers are right next to it. Some of them are not like evidence from them because it's like our photographs, it's an hour. Like Google it, it's
Past what's happening. What is the morning, isn't it?
Board will come to order. Thank you, remain seated.
Paz, it's good to see you, man. I love Joe Cool, by the way. Love Joe Cool. Hey, Darth, how was Cedar Rapids or Cedar Point, wherever that theme park is that you're supposed to go on a date to? You Love it. Joe Cool's risen.
Yes. Ready for the jury?
He's got the Riz. Oh, that's what I need to do. Riz.
All rise for the jury. The jury is present. You may be seated. State call your next witness.
They call Brian Child.
Crud.
Stand here, face clear, please raise your hand and be sworn.
Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding, so help you God?
I do.
Step up to the evidence and show yourself. Speak loud and clear into the microphone so we can you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please state your name, sir.
My name is Brian Childs.
Can you spell it for the court reporter, please?
BRYANCHILES.
Sir, where are you employed?
I'm employed with Axon Enterprise.
What is Axon Enterprise?
Axon is a company that provides technology for law enforcement, including body-worn cameras, dash cams, and taser energy weapons.
How long have you been working at Axon?
I've been there 18 years.
What various positions have you had at Axon Enterprises?
I started in research and development as a electrical technician. I ran the validation test team for about 10 years. I was compliance manager for years, and now my current position is senior investigations engineer.
And how long have you been in that position?
Since January 2020.
On a day-to-day basis, what does that position require of you?
I conduct forensic investigations based on the products that Axon provides, so whether body camera or taser weapons. Conduct analysis of the logs or any testing and produce a report, eventually possibly testify in court on it.
And have you testified in court on those items before, on that information?
Yes, I have.
Have you been allowed to give expert testimony in the field of authenticity of Axon videos?
Yes, I have.
And when we're saying
can't give
authenticity,
expert
what does that
testimony.
mean?
You don't know me.
Authenticity is determining that a video has not been altered. It is as it was recorded.
And what specialized training do you have that allows you to do that task?
On the job work, I've been involved with design teams on the body-worn cameras and doing the validation testing for many years. That was part of the validation testing to verify the product does what it is supposed to do.
Can you explain for the jury the process you go through to determine whether or not an Axon video is authentic and unedited?
There's so.
His credentials, norms, and we're in a position to stipulate any video that will be authentic. So we don't take any.
I just have a few more questions I want to get through, Judge, and there's not too many to go through with him.
To me, the most reliable method would be what's called a SHA-2 hash. SHA, S-H-A, is secure hash algorithm, and that is essentially a fingerprint of a digital file. The algorithm was developed by the National Security Agency, and it's used to authenticate any digital file. It could be a photo or a Word document or video. So if you generate the SHA-2 hash of a file, and then later it can be copied multiple times, put on a USB drive, sent to someone else. Later, if you generate that SHA-2 hash on that file, the copy, if the SHA-2 hash matches, then it's guaranteed identical copy.
And if something is altered, say even a second is taken out of a video, how would that affect the digital fingerprint?
The SHA-2 hash would change. I've done it before. I've changed 1 pixel of 1 frame of a video, and the SHA-2 hash changes.
And in this case, we provided some items to take a look at to see if that digital fingerprint is authentic.
Thing.
Correct.
I really do believe
provided,
that
We have what's called the evidence audit trail. When a piece of
a lot of
evidence
stuff
is
on
uploaded from an Axon body-worn camera,
people took photos.
the
as
SHA-2
a
hash is generated automatically by the
35mm
system
type thing.
after the upload
Not
is
ever
complete,
realizing
and that's recorded in what's called the
Somebody
evidence
realized
audit
it,
trail.
but anyway, not broad spectrum realized. Those individual.
And were you provided a body-worn camera video by the state attorney's office in this case?
I was.
Provided that Axon audit by the Daytona Beach Police Department in this case?
Have I been
Correct,
yawning?
yes.
And does Daytona utilize your cameras, Axon cameras?
Yes, they do.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Showing you C for identification.
Yeah, you don't want engineers dealing with customers.
Yes, I do.
Whose initials are those?
That is
No
mine.
filter.
And what does that DVD contain?
This contains the video
Do you have a little
recorded by
puppy in your
the
lap, by the way?
body-worn camera.
In relation to this case for Officer Rayner?
Correct.
And is that the video, one of that copy of the video you examined in relation to the Axon audit?
Exactly, yes.
Fair and accurate representation?
Yes.
Altered or tampered with in any way you could see or on the actual examination ended up doing?
There's no evidence of that.
Once you had these items, the Axon audit and the video from Officer Jason Rayner, were you able to do that comparison to determine whether or not the Axon video was authentic and unedited?
Yes, I did.
And through that process, did you reach a conclusion?
Yes, I conducted the SHA-2 hash on the copy I was giving, and it matched identically to the SHA-2 hash printed on the evidence audit trail.
Now, I want to ask you real quick about signal sidearm.
Yes.
What does that mean, signal sidearm?
Signal sidearm is a product provided by Axon. It is a sensor that mounts to the holster of a firearm. And when the firearm is removed, the sensor senses that and sends out a wireless signal. Any cameras within range of that signal, if they're configured to, they can automatically start recording without the user interaction.
So one officer's signal sidearm can trigger another officer's camera.
Correct.
During the interaction between the defendant and Officer Jason Rayner, was there any signal sidearm that was in the audit?
Yes, it was.
When the signal sidearm in their interaction, so those first 50 seconds?
In the interaction, no, there was not.
There was a later one around 8:54.
Yeah, about 4 minutes after.
May I have one moment, Your Honor? Thank you, sir. I have no further questions. I'll tender the witness.
Mr. Johnson.
Good morning.
Are you familiar with any capability of the firearm holster sensor indicating that an officer is just moving his hand towards his duty belt?
No.
So in other words, if an officer was just going for the duty belt, there's no sensor that would enact a body-worn camera into that capacity. Is that correct?
No, the firearm needs to be removed from the holster for the sensor to go off.
And Similarly, does it have to be completely taken out of the holster in order for it to be engaged?
It depends on the holster and where the sensor is mounted, but basically the sensor will sense the metallic material on the firearm. So if it's removed enough that the sensor can sense that, then it won't have to be completely removed, but enough to trigger the sensor.
With respect to the specific firearm and holster that was worn by Jason Rayner on June 23rd, 2021, do you have any specific information about how far the sensor was down in his holster?
I do not.
With respect to Mr. Rayner's Axon taser, same question as before, is there any sensor capability on the taser that would enact a body-worn camera or other signal upon an officer just getting in close proximity with his hand to the taser?
No.
And with the taser, does the taser need to be removed entirely from the holster in order for a body-worn camera activation?
Not entirely. Well, I'm not sure what model Officer Rayner had. There are certain models that trigger off of a holster removal and others that don't.
So you're not equipped with any specific information to give the jury about the actual model of taser that was possessed by Jason Rayner on June 23rd?
Correct.
And we heard a little bit in your direct testimony about an audit trail.
Yes.
Do you recall that testimony? Do you have a copy of the audit trail that you discussed?
I do not.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Do you agree that I'm going to do the audit trail?
Yes, this is the device audit trail.
All right. And can you go ahead and just take a look? Just, I don't know how many pages there are offhand, but just go ahead and familiarize yourself with that document and let me know when you're done.
Okay.
Have you seen audit trails prepared in that fashion before?
Yes.
Is there only one format that the audit trails come in?
Well, there's several different formats. Yeah, there's several different formats of audit trail.
And upon looking at it, does that appear to be the audit trail of Mr. Rayner's body-worn camera on June 23rd, 2021?
Yes, it does.
And just,
It is hump
please,
day.
you're far more proficient in this stuff than I, so just please correct me if I'm wrong, but the audit trail has a series
Let's
of
go
items
subscribe to Huck.
numbered 1 through 289.
Yes.
And you can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but the item is corresponded with an event.
This
Is that correct?
the defense.
Correct.
All right. And certain events would be, like for instance,
Sorry.
item number 1 is the audit log is created, correct?
Correct.
Work on the.
And there are also indications of whenever the certain buttons on the device are pressed.
Correct.
And on an Axon camera, there is a power button.
Yes.
There's an event mode button.
Yes.
There are combinations of buttons that can be pressed to enable a sleep mode of the Axon camera.
That's correct.
And the normal setting for an Axon in most law enforcement agencies is that when the event button is pressed, the video goes back 30 seconds to capture the previous 30 seconds beyond the event mode button being pressed.
Objection, lack of foundation.
Well, I'll ask another, Your Honor, may I ask another question? Yeah. Sorry. Okay. You're an expert for Axon, right?
Yes.
And does Axon provide Axons for law enforcement officers? How broad? Across the country, across the world?
Worldwide.
Okay, worldwide. So you're familiar with many different law enforcement agencies and how they utilize Axon cameras. Is that the case?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, you
Axon's
can't
owned by,
pick out a
or
specific
started by
agency and I can
Taser.
tell you what their settings are, but
Sure.
I know how they're used for the most part.
Understood. So when we're talking about pressing an event mode, and let's just talk
Basically,
with
every
respect to
police
the
agency uses Axon.
when you press the event mode button, there's a 30-second look back that happens, right?
Not technically correct.
Okay. Explain where I'm off.
Okay, so when the camera is powered on and in what we call buffering mode, it is recording video to a temporary memory, kind of like RAM in a computer. It's a volatile memory. And agency settings determine how much is recorded in that memory. So if an agency set for a 30-second buffer, then 30 seconds of video will be constantly recorded to the temporary memory. When the event button is double pressed, the camera will switch to event mode and start recording video into what we call permanent memory, and that's the main storage memory. At that point, it will take that 30 seconds of pre-event buffer that was in the temporary memory and save it to the beginning of that file.
So, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the only thing that I was missing is if there is enough memory to allow the 30-second buffer to be recorded, that's the only thing that prevented is a lack of memory on the 30-second buffer.
No, because the buffer, there's always plenty of memory. The permanent memory can run out if you're storing too many videos. The only reason you would have a lack of pre-event buffer is if the camera was not recording to that buffer memory.
Okay. And one way to prevent it from recording is to enable a sleep mode.
Yeah, but so sleep mode puts the camera in a low power mode, and so it is no longer recording. And so, yeah, the buffering period, the buffering video is not being recorded at that time.
And there are a series of buttons that can be pressed on the body-worn camera in order to enable sleep mode.
Correct.
And when those buttons are pressed, sleep mode is engaged, and thereby the 30-second buffer is not recorded.
Correct.
So in other words, if I were to press my body-worn camera at 12 noon and sleep mode was engaged, the recording would start at 12 noon forward. Correct?
Yes, if you started an event right at noon and you were coming out of sleep mode, there would be no buffer and your video would start right at noon. Correct.
And we can move on, but just to make sure we're clear, if sleep mode is not engaged and I hit the button at 12 noon, then the recording would actually start at 11:59 and 30 seconds.
Assuming you were powered on for 30 seconds beforehand. Correct.
And are you equipped with any specific knowledge as to the Daytona Beach police policy concerning whether an officer and under what circumstances can engage in sleep mode in an axon?
No, I am not.
You are familiar, however, with just the general policy that, privacy could be an issue. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I mean,
officers using the bathroom or something like that.
That would be one reason to put it in sleep mode.
And also power saving.
Correct.
And you've had an opportunity to look at the Axon audit trail of Mr. Rayner?
Yes, the device audit trail.
To me, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, to me, the unit started at 100% battery.
I believe so, yes.
And the Axon battery life is, what, 12 hours?
Approximately 12 hours.
Which is consistent with most law enforcement officer shifts.
Correct.
I would imagine if you're marketing a product worldwide to law enforcement officers, you want to make a battery that lasts at least the entirety of the shift, right?
Exactly.
Be no reason to worry about battery life if I'm at 90% an hour into my shift or 2 hours into my shift.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Okay. Are you familiar with what time Mr. Rayner came on shift on June 23rd, 2021?
I am not.
Okay. By inference, we can conclude that if there is an indication on the audit trail which shows that an event button is pressed, that would be consistent with Jason Rayner pressing his event button.
Possibly. I mean, it could be bumping into something, presses it.
Okay. I want to direct your attention to the audit, but probably the more likely outcome would be Jason Rayner pressed the event button.
Most likely. I mean, in general.
All right. I want to direct your attention to items 99 through 105 on the audit trail. If you could please find those pages.
Okay.
All right. And item 99, the time is 6:47 p.m. You agree with that?
Correct.
And there's an event button that's pressed? on item 99, correct?
Correct.
And at 6:47 and 38 seconds, 1 second after item 99, the event button is released. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, but it wasn't a full second. It was a very small portion of a second.
Okay. And I appreciate you, like I said, I appreciate you correcting me if I'm misinterpreting something, so thank you. 101, item 101 at 6:47 and 40 seconds and I think 512 milliseconds, the power button is then pressed. Do you agree with that?
Correct.
Okay. On item 102 at 6:47 and 40 seconds and then a few milliseconds later, the power button is released.
Correct.
On item 104 at 6:47, 41 seconds and 916 milliseconds, the select button is released.
Select button is pressed.
Select button is pressed, and then in item 104, just a few milliseconds later, the select button is released.
Correct.
Okay. And then at 105, we have at 6:47, 42 seconds and 550 milliseconds, sleep mode is enabled.
Correct.
Okay. And you would agree with me that the swiftness with which these buttons are pressed is indicative of intentionally pressing the buttons and enabling sleep mode.
Yeah, and this is the sequence that is followed to place the camera in sleep mode. The power button is a short press, and then the select button is a short press, and that will put it in sleep mode.
So at 6:47, let's just call it 6:47 p.m., Mr. Rayner engages his sleep mode. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
And that would prevent then the next time that he initiated his camera from the 30-second look back being included on any recording. Do you agree with that?
If a recording is started, if it's taken out of sleep mode into event mode, then yes, it would not have a pre-event buffer.
Okay. Well, I'd like to direct your attention to item 110.
Okay.
Okay. And at item 110, sleep mode has been disabled, right?
Correct.
And then let's just move ahead to item 112. There's a recording that's started due to the button being pressed, right?
Correct.
All right. So at 7:21 and 25 seconds, when the recording starts, there's going to be no 30-second look back there, right?
Correct.
And we're moving forward. The recording has started at 7:21 p.m. And then a few minutes later on 7:25, at 7:25 p.m., the recording has been stopped.
Correct.
And that could be consistent with Officer Rayner engaging a member of the public or being involved in some police function.
Objection calls for speculation.
Okay. What is a reason why a law enforcement officer would do a recording if they are on duty and have a body worn camera?
Objection calls for speculation.
No, there could be many reasons an officer would record. I don't know their policy. I don't know.
What are some of the reasons why an officer would engage their camera with a member of the public?
It could be he's asking questions of someone, or someone's approaching him to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that he saw something, maybe not related to a person. It could be a vehicle or something. There's so many reasons.
Consistent with a police function?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And in preparation for your testimony, did the state provide you with any of these collateral videos to see what was going on during those times?
I believe Daytona Beach shared a few videos prior and after.
Okay. So there's a few minutes of recording, and then the recording is stopped at item 114. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
All right. And then there's a title on on item 116, there's the title that's changed?
Yes.
All right.
At this point, I'm going to object to relevance at this point. Incidents prior to. That's also hearsay, Your Honor.
Stand by. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you. And on 116, there's a title changed in the event. Is that just consistent with a video being recorded in connection with the event button being pressed?
Yeah, that's after the video is recorded, the camera automatically, so while it's being recorded, the title is more, so the title is automatically changed to something more user-friendly.
And moving forward then, that event button was released, recording stops at 7:25, and then you agree that at 1:21, item 121, 7:27 p.m., sleep mode is enabled again.
That's correct.
Okay, so just after that interaction, sleep mode is enabled, and then I'll direct your attention over to 152. Sleep mode is enabled again at 8:31 p.m.
That's correct.
Okay, and that would have been after an event button being pressed at 8:28, as indicated in item 144, a recording for just a short amount of time, and then sleep mode is enabled again. Do you agree with that?
So a recording was started at 8:01 and 37 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And then it stopped at 8:28 and 28 seconds. And then sleep mode enabled at 8:31 and 13 seconds.
And going back, there was another sleep mode activation at item 136 at 7:53 p.m. as well. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
And you've reviewed the authenticity of Mr. Rayner's body-worn camera footage that evening?
Yes.
And just off of my recollection, I believe the opening time on that is approximately military time, 2050 hours. Do you agree?
Correct.
Okay. Directing your attention to item 167. Sleep mode is enabled just 2 minutes before Rayner's body-worn camera footage starts, right? At 8:48 p.m.?
Yeah, approximately 2 minutes.
Going down to event 173, the recording is started due to a button press, correct?
That's correct.
And that's at 8:50 and 36 seconds?
Correct.
That would be the time consistent with Officer Rayner going into 133 Kingston?
What's 130?
I mean, that would be, forget about the location of it. That's consistent with the time that the video starts that you reviewed and authenticated, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that when the recording was started at 8:50:36, sleep mode was enabled and we have no 30-second look back as to that interaction.
Correct. There is no 30-second buffer.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further.
Okay, any redirect?
Just very quickly, Your Honor. The last question about the sleep mode and the 30 seconds back, but once he double taps, the camera starts, right?
The camera what?
The camera starts.
Yeah, it's
Double taps, and that's at the officer's movement and his choice to double tap and start the camera, right?
correct. When he double taps, the camera switches from sleep mode to event mode and starts recording immediately.
Thank you, sir. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Any recross? Okay, may the witness be excused. State?
Yes.
Defense? Okay, you are released from the subpoena. Thank you. The state, call your next witness.
State's going to call Detective Matthew Smith. This yours, Terry?
Can I get council sidebar just for 1 second? No court reporter.
Sorry about that, y'all. Oh, that doesn't work. Okay. Anyway, so blue dog's up here. Brown dog was locked outside the door. Oh, buddy, I feel so bad for you. So I was like, well, come on. Well, yeah.
Okay, we had
So
witnesses.
MLS can buy. How you doing, MLS?
Forward. Were you sworn?
Oh, yeah.
Would you raise your hand, sworn, please?
Swear to tell the truth in this proceeding, so.
I do.
Good morning. You speak loud and clear into the microphone. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell it for the court reporter?
Was this guy
Yes,
on
it's
before?
Detective Matthew Smith, Matthew, Smith, Smith.
What do you do for a living, sir?
I'm employed by the city of Daytona Beach as a detective with the Daytona Beach Police Department.
How long have you been with the Daytona Beach Police Department?
9.5 years.
And are you assigned any specialized divisions currently?
I am. I am assigned to the Advanced Technology and Cybercrime Unit, as well as the North Florida Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force.
And were you a part of this same unit back in June of 2021?
I was.
Can you tell the jury generally what your unit does on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, so as far as the task force side go, we investigate internet crimes against children. On the advanced technology, we do digital evidence, extractions of cell phones, interrogation of video surveillance, analyzing and mapping cellular data from cell phone records along those bases.
As part of your work with digital evidence, does that also require you to have, to be familiar with social media applications?
Absolutely.
Does that include Facebook and
Yeah,
Instagram?
what's up?
It does.
When your agency is seeking Facebook records or Instagram records or another social media platform, do y'all have to do a search warrant to get that information?
You do.
And in this case, did your agency seek and receive a search warrant for both an Instagram account and a Facebook account for the defendant?
We did.
When y'all receive records from a social media account, let's stay with Instagram, what format do you get those records in?
From Instagram and Facebook, those records come into a downloadable PDF report.
And do you pretty much have to scroll page by page through the report?
That's correct.
Are you able to search through the report using keywords?
That's correct.
And what types of materials are typically contained within the PDF that you get, again, for example, for Instagram?
Typically, they're going to have your basic user data information, registration dates, IPs of the registration, phone numbers attached, videos, photos that were posted or used, any chats, your basic information, and whatever activations or activity that was performed on those platforms.
And are you familiar with what an Instagram story is?
I am.
Can you describe that for the jury, what it is?
Yeah, so an Instagram story is a section of Instagram where you can post basic highlights or moments throughout your day that typically last about 24 hours.
And does Instagram typically preserve the content of a story?
They do not.
Is it kind of similar to what they do with, I'll ask this first, with Instagram, can you use Instagram to video call somebody?
Yes, you can do video calls, you can do audio calls.
And does Instagram preserve the content of those video calls?
The content, no.
Did you review the Instagram records that were responsive to the police, to Daytona Beach's search warrant for Instagram?
I did.
How many pages were these records?
A little over 5,400.
And what was the account name or screen name that was associated with the records?
RBG Vibes.
Did those records contain photographs?
They did.
Did they contain posts?
They did.
Can you tell the jury what a post is?
The same thing about the
A post is basically a news feed area where you can post either pictures or videos of something that you like or something that you want to state.
Could you also post, like, if you liked a quote from Winston Churchill, could you type that quote out and post it on Instagram?
You can.
Does Instagram also keep and preserve and provide messages or chats?
They do.
Can you explain to the jury what an Instagram message or chat is, please?
A chat is basically a conversation between two parties or multiple participants, logging whatever they want to say back and forth to each other.
Unlike the calls, Instagram to Instagram call using the app, you get that content, these chats.
You do.
Can I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, be careful about the fall apart.
Thank you. Approaching with states triple M, MMM, and states double O. For identification.
Yes. The court has ruled on these exhibits before.
Your Honor, I'm going to move, for the clerk first, I'm going to move these items into evidence pursuant to a previously filed business record certification.
Okay, subject to our discussion, the items will be admitted as evidence.
I just sent you a message. Okay, so you don't need to read that. The judge is like clockwork. And between now and noon, he announces lunch, and he's going to go, he takes an hour and a half for lunch. I'm going to stop this stream, clean myself. Because here's the thing is, well, besides being clean, you need that. Is that if there's a strike or something like that, or whatever, YouTube, after 6 hours, you can't edit it. And so you lose that whole stream. You'll start it back when the court comes back. And so I just sent you that message. I said, I'd love to have you.
Do you recognize the 2 pages of that exhibit?
I do.
What is it? What are those 2 pages?
These are the first 2
When did
pages
that
of a search warrant return report. It has your basic information, as stated before, when it was reported or when it was generated, the vanity name or the username, registration dates, whether or not the account is still active, any phone numbers attached to it, and some IP logs.
Let me ask you first, what is the vanity name that's on those records?
The vanity name shows RBG Vibes.
And what is the registration date for the account?
That would be October 26, 2020.
Now, is there a phone number that's associated with the account?
There is.
And what phone number is that?
It's 954-928-6399.
Now, in addition to looking at did you look at the Instagram records in their entirety?
I did.
And did you also take a look at the Facebook records as well?
I did.
Were you able to cross-reference that phone number between the Facebook records and the Instagram records?
I was.
And what did you see?
I found multiple times where the defendant had utilized this number by telling people in chats to call him at this number.
Fair to say over 100 times in the Facebook records?
Absolutely.
And multiple times in the Instagram records?
Yes, sir.
Do you see a portion on those first 2 pages about kind of the current status of the account?
I do.
And what does that say?
It shows if the account is still active, it states false, and that the reason is disabled, and it was disabled June 25th, 2021.
And what does that mean when an account is disabled?
Disabled means that Instagram had actually stepped in and disabled this account.
Having reviewed over 5,000 pages of records from Instagram, does that account belong to Othal Wallace?
It does.
Why do you believe that?
He had just said,
through
"Call me."
analyzation of the records, it shows
through the
different chats,
app.
photos, multiple chats of him recognize himself being that. Through Facebook, there was post of RBG Vibes front page stating that this is his account to let him and his followers know where he can be reached at.
I should ask earlier, have you looked at records like this before?
I have.
Fair to say many times?
Multiple times a day, yes.
And did you see any indication that this account belonged to anyone else?
I did not.
In regard to reviewing, you said there are photographs in the account?
Yes.
Fair to say dozens of photographs?
That would be correct.
Were you able, looking at the photographs in this account, to have an opinion which hand the defendant uses?
Yes, through analyzation of the social media account, I can determine that he is right-hand dominant.
If the witness could step down, Judge, I just want to go through the other exhibits with him.
Yes. Counsel, feel free to move about.
This is going to be publishing the composite OO, what's now in evidence. It states 45. Thank you. So is this an example of an Instagram post, sir?
It is.
What's all this at the bottom of the post?
So this is referencing metadata. It gives a unique identifier for the post that was created. It shows basically the URL that connects it, the source, if it was published or not, and if it was made viral.
I should have asked you earlier, was this an account that was open for anybody to see, or was it a private account?
It was public access.
And what's the difference between a public access account and a private account?
So for public, if you go onto their platform or onto their page, anybody can see any type of material that's posted. If it's private, only the ones that are following or friends are able to see the content that's posted on that platform.
And what was the date that this item was posted?
This shows June 3rd, 2021.
And if you could, go ahead, I'm sorry.
13, 15, 11 seconds UTC.
We heard a little bit about UTC earlier. That's the standard, universal standard time.
That's correct.
So Eastern time would be 4 hours earlier?
For summer, it would be -4.
Okay, so it would be
9:15 a.m.
Thank you. Could you just read the content, please?
Yes, the post reads, Johnny Bolton Johnny Bolton. Understand we are at war. Johnny Bolton died at the hands of a trigger-happy SWAT team of Cobb County. These crackers are not far from seeing the blood of their own flowing thick in the gutters of America. It's war.
Oh.
And
Well, that's sweet of him, isn't he? That sounds like a Hallmark card, doesn't it?
This page number represents what number this post is.
Oh, what a sweet little individual. That sounds good. Can't wait.
put up the second post here. Can you tell from this page of the Instagram record, page 1074, what date and time that post was made?
Yes, the date shows June 7th, 2021, 18:15 and 52.
So they aren't showing any of this on the other stream.
And can you read that content, please?
Yes. One day I will take great pride and honor in getting me some pig's blood on my hands and boots. If you can't feel this energy, following me is not going to be healthy for you. I pray against my enemy and wish death to all who are oppressive to the black culture, black power.
And again, on a public account?
Correct.
Did y'all catch all that? About the...
Next, I'm going to talk to you about Instagram pages 424.
He must not be kosher. I think that's he was making a non-kosher post about pig blood.
And was one of the participants
Running thick on their boots.
RBG vibes?
That's correct.
And why do we see this in these pages? Why do we see this post again we just saw?
So this is
His volume so off.
from the other participant that sent it to the defendant. He screenshotted from his phone, as you can see, his battery life and the time, and screenshotted the post with the
Guys, I'm at 600% volume.
bottom and sent it to him to discuss about that post.
And this, right down here, is this part of the post made by RBG vibes?
Yeah, so you can set a post and then set caption underneath the post to kind of give further information on what you're posting about.
And what is the caption of that post read portion of there?
It states RBG vibes. I know one day they're gonna try, and that day may be my last in the physical realm. I have accepted all, and then it says more, and you have to actually click that to see further over.
He's accepted it.
Correct, if you're actually looking at it.
So do you guys have a, do you guys blame history for your faults?
That's correct. This chat is in reference directly to that screenshot of the post being sent to the defendant.
And that's going to be the next two pages of the exhibit here.
Yes, sir.
My grandfather grew up without indoor plumbing.
This shows
That's the reason why
June 7th,
I excrement outside.
1819-05 UTC, which is directly
Because that's the reason.
It shows same day, June 7th, 2021, 19:13 and 44 seconds UTC.
So within about an hour, all these messages are sent back and forth.
Yes, sir.
You won't, since they're all within an hour, I won't worry about asking you the times of each message. But for the content, does the content have the author or the source of the message?
Yeah, so the basic makeup of this is it's going to show you the author, which is the person that wrote the message, or who it was coming from. It's going to show you the time and date that it was sent, and then the body reference of the actual verbiage or the actual message that was included in the chat.
And so this first message, who is it from? Who's sending it?
A username Almighty.
I have an observation about this judge.
RBG vibes is the that's correct. It's coming to.
Correct.
And what is the content of that message?
The content of the message or body of the message is LOL, you love getting banned.
And does
Left on left.
And then who sends the next message?
Again, by Almighty Mad Max, with a body stating,
Mad Max.
kill it 100%.
At that point, does the account RPG vibes the defendant respond?
He does.
And what is his response?
As the body of that message is, fuck these crackers and their power, I'm speaking to them.
And does Almighty Max respond?
He does, and indicates two boxes which would resemble some sort of emoji that was sent back to him.
So Almighty Mad Max sends some type of emoji.
Correct.
What's an emoji?
Emoji is basically a small character representing an emotion.
Can you give an example?
Such as a smiley face, or happy innocent smiley face.
Could you? What's an example? A smiley face. What's an emoji? It's a character that represents an emotion. I know. That's why I don't do this. I would laugh.
He does. And what does he say? The body of the message states,
I do paperwork like hell.
watching me, and I'm talking directly to them.
Does the Almighty Mad Max respond to that message?
He does.
What does he say?
We need your account to stay alive, though, brother. And then with some sort of emoji following as well.
So another, I mean, come up with a smiley face with some kind of
Correct. Some kind of emoji following.
Okay. Does RPG vibes the defendant respond to that message?
He does.
What does he say in that message, the next message?
You right, Pam. That's why I've been not tagging my old tags and not saying too much. But raw, I want they blood for what they have done. I'm in mini June. They just killed another brother.
And who sends the next message after that?
RBG vibes as well, which is the defendant.
And the content, so, go ahead, content of that message.
I hate them.
Does Almighty Mad Max respond?
He does.
What does he say?
The body states, say less.
And does he send another message after that?
He does. The body states, more better talks in action in person.
I know we're kind of cut off here, but is the author of the
Who is Mighty Max? Or Mad Max, or whatever they're saying. Dragon Man, what's up?
What's the content of his next message that he sends to Almighty Mad Max?
His content states bet.
Does Almighty Mad Max respond to that message?
He does. It states, these lines ran by the opposition.
Does the defendant respond to that message?
He does. I hope they listen. Fuck them, brother. You just don't know how close I am, bro.
And what's the response by Almighty Mad Max?
I do, and you not alone.
And who says that?
Almighty Max sends another message stating chest, though.
And who sends the next message?
Almighty Mad Max sends again, stating don't make it easy. Followed by another message by Almighty Mad Max stating for them.
And then does the defendant respond?
And then the defendant responds, brah, if they come for me, it's a message to y'all. Brah, I'm not going back down, though.
And what's the response from Almighty Mad Max?
Almighty Mad Max's response is facts.
And does he send the last message in this exchange on June 7th?
He does. That states, we here for you.
That concludes the conversation on June 7th.
It does.
Thank you, sir. You can return to the stand.
I do.
And one moment, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Detective witness, Your Honor.
I think we'll like to take a lunch break at this time.
Oh, here we go.
Take our break until 1:30. And return at
1:30. Okay,
Remind
guys,
you
that's
not to
it.
discuss the case with anyone.
1:30. Y'all, thank you for being here. Please come back. 1:30. We'll be back on stream. Dragon Man, it's good to see you, bud. It's always good to see you. Guys, 1:30 is, oops. Thank you, Orlando. Okay. So, anyway. Hopefully I can get all this hot mess looking good again. Oh, look at this, man. I pay a lot for a haircut. White Rabbit does. She likes arm candy. Not my fault. Anyway, I have a lopsided head, or I sleep really weird. I haven't showered. Ha! You guys wanted to hear that, didn't you? Anyway, hopefully I get this hot mess into just hotness. Guys, I will be back. It'll be 1:30. I'm going to set up the other stream right now so the notifications will go out. Please come back and join us this afternoon. I've asked Yaya to come up, our old friend from the She Business trial. And she's cool, man. She's so cool. Just laid back. I was thinking about it the other day. The She Business trial, so laid back. So laid back. Who you stream with on these things, it matters a lot. And also, this is, if in case maybe y'all wonder one more time, this is the first time someone's being tried on the death penalty in Florida since they changed their laws. Okay? You no longer have to have a majority to convict somebody. Only have to have 8 out of 12, 75%. Take 75% for the government to end somebody else's life. I don't know. We're not here to have the death penalty debate, but it will be an issue because death penalty gets an automatic appeal. So it'll become a big issue then. One of the things that will be an issue also is, so they're saying it's self-defense, crime mapping, and the Fourth Amendment, how that plays in. Just because you're sitting somewhere, does that mean that they can come towards you? Take the badge off. Remember, I read a little excerpt that was from an attorney's office about Florida law. They're going to use deadly force against you. You're just sitting there. What if you're sitting in front porch and a cop comes walking up and pulls a gun on you? And you're just sitting there, doing typical Florida things, drinking your Bud Light, smoking your Virginia Slim. And you got to defend yourself. According to that article I read, Florida, you can. I always believe that you can in the majority of jurisdictions. But, again, we focus on facts. These are just questions I want you guys to keep in your mind because if this stuff happens, this is going to be a historic trial and nobody else is going to cover it like this. I guarantee you, I don't think anybody else is even covering this right now. And I'll be back at 1:30. I love you guys. Mods, thank you guys so much. It's funny, I started watching a different stream. I was watching the last one, the feed on there, and I was like, boy, I gotta tell the mods, these people can't say this stuff. I was like, wait a second, nobody. It's like, I know Jim and No Filter be nuking that person in a hurry. And I was like, oh. But the most important thing is mods, I want you guys to have a good time. You don't have to sit here all day if you don't want to. Okay? Everybody's here for just leave it on in the background. It's got your noise. And was that? But I do thank you all. I thank all of you, especially y'all that tune in. Hour and a half. I shall return. you see that? Do you see that little? Or is it right there? You see that? Blue dog. Let's see here. What if I turn this off? She's wrecked the. Why is my camera not charging? That's not good. Oh, that didn't work at all, did it? There you go. Blue dog. You see what she does? Look at those feet. Look at those feet right there. I wish I could tickle it. Tickle, 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 tickle. Tickle, 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 tickle. Hello. I'm gonna get your foot. Tickle, 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 tickle. I got brown dog up. I gotta go. I'm gonna be in trouble. Love you guys. See you soon. Oh, wait. Let's have some fun.
Well, I woke up to go get me a cold pop. And then I thought somebody was barbecuing. I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire. Then I ran out. I didn't grab no shoes or nothing, Jesus. I ran for my life. And then the smoke got her. I got bronchitis. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time for that.